In this video, we're going to be breaking down 3 hours of classic versus modern SpongeBob. Let's get started with how this beloved underwater world has transformed over more than 2 decades of animated storytelling. We start off by covering the pineapple split. When fans talk about SpongeBob SquarePants, they usually split the show into 2 main groups, classic SpongeBob and modern SpongeBob. This divide represents one of the most significant creative shifts in animation history, marking the difference between a creator-driven vision and network-controlled content expansion. Steven Hillenberg originally intended to end the series after Season 3 with the SpongeBob SquarePants movie in 2004, which he wanted to be the series finale. Hillenberg wanted to end the series so the show wouldn't jump the shark, citing concerns among Nickelodeon executives that the show had peaked when the movie was being produced. But Nickelodeon could not afford to end the show. The network saw how much money SpongeBob was making and wanted more episodes. Classic SpongeBob includes seasons 1 through 3, plus the SpongeBob SquarePants movie from 2004. Steven Hillenberg worked closely on these seasons as the showrunner and had direct control over the show's direction. These episodes aired from 1999 to 2004 and are what most fans consider the golden age of the series. The classic era was defined by Hillenberg's direct involvement as creator, showrunner, and creative visionary. Hillenberg started developing SpongeBob SquarePants in 1994, using characters and concepts from the Intertidal Zone, an informative picture book about tide pool animals that he wrote while teaching marine biology at the Orange County Marine Institute. His background as a marine biologist gave the early episodes their authentic underwater feel and clever sea life jokes that educated while they entertained. The classic episodes had a special charm that set them apart from what came later. SpongeBob was innocent and optimistic but still had some common sense. Patrick was silly but not mean-spirited. Squidward got annoyed with his neighbors, but when bad things happened to him, it usually made sense because he had been rude or selfish first. The humor came from clever writing, character development, and situational comedy rather than from characters getting hurt for no reason. The first season used cell animation, which gave it a unique hand-drawn look. The show had a more relaxed pace, and the characters felt like real personalities instead of just cartoon stereotypes. Episodes like Band Geeks, Chocolate with Nuts, and Rock Bottom became instant classics that fans still quote today, demonstrating the timeless quality of the writing and character development. Modern SpongeBob officially started with Season 4 inches 2005. According to fans, everything got worse after Season 3 and the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. The common agreement among fans is that this is when the show's quality declined. Classic SpongeBob ended on the 12th of October 2004 with the movie. Modern SpongeBob began on the 6th of May 2005 with Season 4, only a 7-month difference. The changes were noticeable immediately. The new episodes incorporated more slapstick humor, and each character became a caricature of their original selves. SpongeBob became immature, Patrick was dumbed down to a point where it was difficult for him to do anything, and Squidward was the butt of every joke and the target of all physical pain. This marked a fundamental shift from character-driven comedy to situation-driven slapstick. Modern SpongeBob also introduced a style that was more graphic and difficult to look at sometimes, with episodes featuring gross-out humor like characters getting body parts ripped off or showing disgusting medical conditions. The show started relying on shock value instead of clever jokes, moving away from the subtle absurdity that defined the classic era. This split matters because it represents more than just a change in showrunners. It shows what happens when a creative vision gets diluted by corporate demands. According to Paul Tibbitt, Hillenberg used to say, "You know, one of these days they're going to want to make SpongeBob babies. That's when I'm out of here." This quote shows how protective Hillenberg was of his creation, and how he worried about it being commercialized beyond recognition. The split also explains why SpongeBob has such a divided fan base. Older fans who grew up with classic SpongeBob often feel disappointed by the modern episodes, while younger viewers who started with modern SpongeBob might not understand what all the fuss is about. Both groups are watching essentially different shows that just happen to have the same characters. Understanding this split helps explain why SpongeBob discussions can get so heated. When someone says they love SpongeBob, they might be talking about the thoughtful, marine biology-inspired comedy of the classic era. When someone else says they think SpongeBob is annoying, they might be thinking of the loud, slapstick-heavy modern episodes. The Pineapple Under the Sea has housed many different versions of our favorite Sponge over the years, each reflecting different creative philosophies and industry pressures. The classic versus modern split represents a fundamental change in SpongeBob's creative direction, marking the transition from Hillenberg's original vision to network-driven content expansion, creating 2 distinct eras with different tones, humor styles, and creative priorities. Moving on to the next section, how SpongeBob began, Hillenberg's vision and early staff. Stephen McDaniel Hillenberg was born on the 21st of August 1961 in Lawton, Oklahoma, and raised in Anaheim, California. He became fascinated with marine biology as a child, and later developed an interest in art. This unique combination of scientific knowledge and artistic talent would prove crucial in creating one of the most successful animated series in television history. At age 15, he snorkeled for the first time. Hillenberg took part in a dive program at Woods Coves in Laguna Beach as part of the regional occupational program at Savannah. This experience, as well as subsequent dives, reinforced his interest in and led to his decision to study marine biology in college. The switch clicked, and I decided I wanted to be a marine biologist. But I also liked being an artist. In 1984, Stephen Hillenberg graduated from Humboldt State University with a bachelor's degree in natural resource planning and interpretation, with an emphasis on marine resources. He became a marine biology teacher at the Orange County Marine Institute, now known as the Ocean Institute in Dana Point, California. Hillenberg was a marine biology teacher there for 3 years. We taught tide pool ecology, nautical history, diversity, and adaptation. Working there, I saw how enamored kids are with undersea life, especially with tide pool creatures. During his time as a marine biology teacher, Hillenberg discovered his calling as an educator and storyteller. While working there, one of the educational directors asked him if he would be interested in creating an educational comic book about the animal life of tidal pools. He created a comic called The Intertidal Zone, which he used to teach his students. As a marine biology teacher at the Ocean Institute in Dana Point, Stephen Hillenberg created a comic book called Intertidal Zone as an educational tool. The Intertidal Zone featured anthropomorphic forms of sea life, many of which would evolve into SpongeBob SquarePants characters, including Bob the Sponge, the comic's co-host, who resembled a realistic sea sponge, as opposed to his later SpongeBob SquarePants character, a sea sponge whose stylized square shape resembles a kitchen sponge. This educational comic would become the foundation for everything that followed. Some evidence shows that the idea for SpongeBob SquarePants dates back to 1986, during Hillenberg's time at the Orange County Marine Institute. After leaving teaching, Hillenberg enrolled at the California Institute of the Arts in 1989 to pursue a career in animation. He was later offered a job on the Nickelodeon animated television series Rocko's Modern Life following the success of his short films The Green Beret and Wormholes, which were made as part of his studies. Derek Drymon, who served as creative director for the first 3 seasons, has said that Hillenberg wanted to surround himself with a team of young and hungry people. Many of the major contributors to SpongeBob SquarePants had worked before with Hillenberg on Rocko's Modern Life, including Drymon, art director Nick Jennings, supervising director Alan Smart, writer divided by voice actor Doug Lawrence, often credited as Mr. Lawrence, and Tim Hill, who helped develop the series Bible. During the production of Rocko's Modern Life, Martin Olson, one of the writers, read The Intertidal Zone and encouraged Hillenberg to create a television series with a similar concept. At that point, he had not even considered creating his own series. This encouragement from a fellow professional proved to be the catalyst that transformed Hillenberg's educational comic into a television concept. Although Drymon would go on to have a significant influence on SpongeBob SquarePants, he was not offered a role on the series initially. As a late recruit to Rocko's Modern Life, he had not established much of a relationship with Hillenberg before SpongeBob's conception. Hillenberg first sought out Drymon's storyboard partner, Mark O'Hare, but he had just created the soon-to-be syndicated comic strip, Citizen Dog. The team that Hillenberg assembled was crucial to the show's success. While pitching the cartoon to Nickelodeon executives, Hillenberg donned a Hawaiian shirt, brought along an underwater terrarium with models of the characters, and played Hawaiian music to set the theme. The setup was described by Nickelodeon executive Eric Coleman as pretty amazing. This pitch perfectly captured the show's unique blend of educational content and entertainment value. They were given money and 2 weeks to write the pilot episode, Help Wanted. Drymon, Hillenberg, and Jennings returned with what was described by Nickelodeon official Albie Hecht as a performance he wished he had on tape. The pilot's success came from the perfect synthesis of Hillenberg's marine biology knowledge, his artistic vision, and his team's animation expertise. The writing staff often used their personal experiences as inspiration for the storylines of the series' episodes. For example, the episode Sailor Mouth, where SpongeBob and Patrick learn profanity, was inspired by creative director Derek Drymon's experience as a child of getting into trouble for using the F word in front of his mother. This approach of mining real experiences for comedy gold became a hallmark of the classic era. There are many other smaller subtleties in the series that are a result of Hillenberg's prior experience and extensive knowledge. To name a few, Plankton says in The Algae's Always Greener that he's eating holographic meatloaf for dinner, which actually makes sense, seeing as plankton get their energy through photosynthesis, and holograms are projections of light. These scientific accuracies, woven seamlessly into the comedy, demonstrated the educational foundation underlying the entertainment. Stephen Hillenberg drew inspiration from his own life while designing the main characters. Mr. Krabs was based on Hillenberg's former manager at a sea-themed restaurant. Pearl was inspired by his regular supervision of whale watches while working as a marine science educator. SpongeBob's design was influenced by Hillenberg's appearance as a young child, with nerdy gapped teeth. Summary: SpongeBob's creation stemmed from Hillenberg's unique background, combining marine biology education with artistic talent, supported by a carefully chosen team of collaborators from Rocko's Modern Life, who shared his vision of creating entertaining yet educational content. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, building Bikini Bottom: tone, characters, and setting. The creation of Bikini Bottom wasn't just about designing an underwater city. It was about crafting a complete world that would feel both fantastical and grounded in real marine science. When the SpongeBob crew began production of the series' pilot episode, they were tasked with designing stock locations to be used repeatedly, where most scenes would take place, like the Krusty Krab and SpongeBob's Pineapple House. The idea was to keep everything nautical, so the crew used plenty of rope, wooden planks, ship's wheels, netting, anchors, boilerplates, and rivets to create the show's setting. Transitions between scenes are marked by bubbles filling the screen, accompanied by the sound of rushing water. The series features sky flowers as a main setting material. When series background designer Kenny Pittenger was asked what they were, he answered, "They function as clouds in a way, but since the show takes place underwater, they aren't really clouds." Because of the tiki influence on the show, the background painters use a lot of pattern. This attention to environmental detail helped establish the show's unique visual identity. The choice of location wasn't arbitrary. In 2015, Tom Kenny confirmed the fictitious city is named after Bikini Atoll, though the creators have been careful to distance the show from any darker implications of that connection. The underwater setting allowed for unlimited creative possibilities while maintaining the educational foundation that Hillenberg valued so deeply. Hillenberg's approach to character creation was deeply personal and scientifically informed. Steven Hillenberg drew inspiration from his own life while designing the main characters. Mr. Krabs was based on Hillenberg's former manager at a sea-themed restaurant. Pearl was inspired by his regular supervision of whale watches while working as a marine science educator. This grounding in real experience gave the characters authentic personality traits that resonated with audiences. He wanted his series to stand out from most popular cartoons of the time, which he felt were exemplified by buddy comedies like The Ren and Stimpy Show. As a result, Hillenberg decided to focus on a single main character, the weirdest sea creature he could think of. The choice of a sea sponge was perfect. Sponges are simple organisms that could be molded into any personality while maintaining biological plausibility. The show's narrator, aptly named Frenchie, is said to have been inspired by the legendary explorer and oceanographer Jacques-Yves Cousteau. He doesn't make too many visual appearances in the show, but when he does, he's often wearing a red beanie atop his diver's helmet, a signature Cousteau apparel choice. One of Hillenberg's greatest fascinations was the ocean. He loved swimming, scuba diving, and watching Jacques Cousteau's famous documentaries. In fact, the French-sounding narrator in many SpongeBob episodes is a parody of Cousteau. The setting's tone perfectly balanced absurdist humor with genuine heart. There's one fan theory that Bikini Bottom is the way that it is, with complex sea creature characters due to nuclear testing done at Bikini Atoll, the island floating over Bikini Bottom, though this interpretation was never officially endorsed and contradicts the show's generally optimistic worldview. The architectural choices in Bikini Bottom reflected both creativity and environmental consciousness. When touring Bikini Bottom, one might notice that the buildings are pieces of tin tacked together, or other pieces of garbage. Some believe this is to show how marine life uses discarded trash. Taking it a step further, the tin often looks wavy, which could be due to the tidal currents. This detail work showed how much thought went into every aspect of the world building. Character relationships in Bikini Bottom were carefully crafted to represent different aspects of society and human nature. SpongeBob represented pure optimism and work ethic. Patrick embodied carefree friendship and simple pleasures. Squidward served as the cynical adult perspective, often serving as the voice of reason, though he was usually ignored. Mr. Krabs represented capitalism and business concerns, while Plankton embodied the classic underdog villain who we couldn't help but root for occasionally. After high school, Hillenberg had a summer job as a cook in a seafood restaurant in Maine. This restaurant later found its way into his TV show as The Krusty Krab, where SpongeBob has the same job. This personal connection to food service helped inform the workplace dynamics that became central to many episodes. The tone of classic SpongeBob was remarkably consistent, innocent without being naive, educational without being preachy, and funny without relying on cruelty. The show managed to be simultaneously silly and sophisticated, appealing to children through bright colors and simple jokes, while entertaining adults with subtle references and clever wordplay. The setting also allowed for unlimited storytelling possibilities. Being underwater meant that the laws of physics could be bent when necessary for comedy, characters could have campfires and cry tears, while still maintaining enough internal logic to keep the world believable. This balance between fantasy and reality became one of the show's greatest strengths. The characters' homes reflected their personalities perfectly. SpongeBob lived in a pineapple, tropical, bright, and slightly absurd. Patrick lived under a rock, literally and figuratively representing his simple worldview. Squidward lived in an Easter Island head, mysterious, artistic, and imposing. These visual choices immediately communicated character traits without requiring exposition. The workplace setting of the Krusty Krab provided a perfect foundation for storytelling. It was a place where characters with different goals and personalities had to interact regularly, creating natural conflict and resolution opportunities. The restaurant setting also allowed for stories about work ethic, customer service, competition, and friendship that felt both timeless and relevant. Summary: Bikini Bottom was meticulously crafted as a world that balanced fantastical underwater impossibilities with scientifically grounded marine life, creating a setting that supported both educational content and limitless comedic possibilities through thoughtful character design and environmental storytelling. Moving on to the next section, the classic formula, seasons 1 to 3 explained. The classic SpongeBob formula wasn't just about underwater comedy, it was a carefully crafted approach to storytelling that balanced innocent humor with genuine heart, educational content with pure entertainment, and character development with episodic adventures. From 1999 to 2004, Hillenberg and his incredible staff of animators, writers, and voice actors crafted one of the funniest and most iconic runs for an animated series of all time. And the cream of the crop of episodes from this fruitful period are still 24-karat classics, more than 20 years later. This era, seasons 1 to 3, is what die-hard fans consider to be the golden era of SpongeBob SquarePants. SpongeBob SquarePants received widespread critical acclaim in its early years, with praise given to its characters, surreal humor, writing, visuals, animation, and Hawaiian-influenced soundtrack, with the show's first 3 seasons often referred to as its golden era. The classic episodes had a special charm that set them apart from what came later. SpongeBob was innocent and optimistic, but still had some common sense. He could be frustrated, disappointed, or even occasionally angry, but these emotions felt genuine and proportionate to the situations. Character dynamics and relationship foundation. The character relationships in classic SpongeBob were the foundation of the show's success. Patrick was silly but not mean-spirited. His stupidity was endearing rather than malicious. Squidward got annoyed with his neighbors, but when bad things happened to him, it usually made sense because he had been rude or selfish first. The humor came from clever writing, character development, and situational comedy rather than from characters getting hurt for no reason. SpongeBob is very reminiscent of older Nickelodeon shows. Elements like quirky humor, annoying neighbors, fun plot lines, slightly dark humor in a few episodes, mishaps at work, worst enemies, and mishaps due to SpongeBob's antics all make this show great. The show maintained a perfect balance where every character served a purpose and had their own distinct personality that complemented the others. Educational elements and marine biology influence. Hillenberg's marine biology background permeated every aspect of the classic era. Many of the ideas for the show originated in an unpublished educational comic book titled The Intertidal Zone, which Hillenberg created in the mid-1980 seconds. This educational foundation gave the show an authenticity that was both entertaining and informative, seamlessly weaving real marine science into fantastical underwater adventures. The show featured accurate marine life behaviors and characteristics, though exaggerated for comedic effect. Characters like Sandy the squirrel living underwater in an air dome, or the various fish species that populated Bikini Bottom, all drew from Hillenberg's extensive knowledge of ocean ecosystems. This scientific grounding gave the show a unique credibility that set it apart from other cartoons of the era. Writing staff excellence and collaborative process. The writing staff during this era was exceptional and deeply collaborative. The writing staff often used their personal experiences as inspiration for the storylines of the series' episodes. For example, the episode Sailor Mouth, where SpongeBob and Patrick learn profanity, was inspired by creative director Derek Drymon's experience as a child of getting into trouble for using the F-word in front of his mother. Drymon said, "The scene where Patrick is running to Mr. Krabs to tattle, with SpongeBob chasing him, is pretty much how it happened in real life." This approach of mining real experiences for comedy gold became a hallmark of the classic era. The idea for the episode The Secret Box also came from one of Drymon's childhood experiences. Hillenberg explained, "Drymon had a secret box as a kid and started telling us about it. We wanted to make fun of him and use it." This personal connection to the material gave the episodes an authenticity and emotional resonance that purely fictional scenarios often lacked. Animation style and technical excellence. The first season of the American animated television series SpongeBob SquarePants, created by former marine biologist and animator Stephen Hillenberg, aired on Nickelodeon from the 1st of May 1999 to March 3, 2001, and consists of 20 half-hour episodes. The technical execution during this era was groundbreaking for television animation. The show initially used cell animation, giving it a distinctive hand-drawn quality that added warmth and personality to every frame. In his review for The Washington Post, Michael Kavner rewatched the pilot episode Help Wanted in 2009 and said so much of the style and polish are already in place. He ranked the episode at no. 3 at his The Top 5 SpongeBob Episodes, We Pick 'Em list. Nancy Basili of theabout.com said, "The humor and optimistic essence of SpongeBob is evident even in this first episode. From the very beginning, the show demonstrated a level of polish and consistency that would define the entire classic era. Humor philosophy and comedy structure. The humor in classic SpongeBob operated on multiple levels simultaneously. This episode contains all the best elements of classic SpongeBob. High-level slapstick humor, quote, able lines, the deliciousness has landed. That was an oval, it has to be a circle. An iconic song in the campfire song, and it all happens in the dirt, sand, just outside our beloved main characters' homes. Episodes like the camping episode demonstrated how the show could take simple premises and build them into elaborate, multi-layered comedic experiences. This episode, as was so often the case with Golden Era SpongeBob, derived its comedy from a real-life lesson that all kids of a certain age must learn, the power of swearing. When SpongeBob and Patrick pick up a handful of dirty new words from a defamatory piece of graffiti strewn across the dumpster behind the Krusty Krab, they discover a whole new world of linguistic self-expression. Episodes like Sailor Mouth showed how the show could tackle mature themes, while maintaining its innocent, child-friendly exterior. Iconic episodes that defined the era. Band Geeks is the second segment of the 15th episode of the second season, and the 35th overall episode of the American animated television series SpongeBob SquarePants. It originally aired on Nickelodeon in the United States on the 7th of September 2001. It was written by C.H. Greenblatt, Aaron Springer, and Meriwether Williams, and the animation was directed by Frank Weiss. Band Geeks represents perhaps the perfect encapsulation of everything that made classic SpongeBob special. Band Geeks received universal acclaim from both fans and critics. Upon release, the episode was awarded and honored at the 2002 Golden Reel Awards for Best Sound Editing in Television Animation category. Tom Kenny, SpongeBob's voice actor, considers Band Geeks one of his favorite episodes. The episode's cultural impact extended far beyond its original broadcast, with the Sweet Victory sequence becoming one of the most beloved moments in animation history. Chocolate with Nuts has received universal acclaim from both critics and fans alike, and is often cited as one of the show's best episodes. Jordan Moreau, Katzy Stefan, and David Viramontes of Variety ranked Chocolate with Nuts as the 4th best SpongeBob SquarePants episode. Episodes like this showcase the show's ability to create memorable, quotable moments that would endure for decades. Musical excellence and sound design. The Hawaiian-influenced soundtrack became one of the show's most distinctive features. The music perfectly complemented the underwater setting while creating a unique auditory landscape that was both tropical and aquatic. The use of steel guitar, ukulele, and other Hawaiian instruments created an atmosphere that was simultaneously relaxing and energetic, matching the show's tone perfectly. Sound effects were equally important to the show's success. The distinctive sounds of footsteps on sand, bubbles rising, and various sea creature noises all contributed to the immersive underwater experience. These audio elements were so well crafted that they became instantly recognizable and are still used in modern episodes. Pacing and episode structure. Classic SpongeBob episodes followed a carefully structured format that maximized comedic impact while maintaining narrative coherence. Episodes typically began with a simple setup, built tension through escalating complications, reached a comedic climax, and resolved with a satisfying conclusion that often included a moral lesson or character growth moment. The pacing was deliberately measured, allowing jokes time to land and characters time to react naturally. This contrasted sharply with the rapid-fire pace that would characterize later seasons. The show understood that comedy requires rhythm and timing, not just rapid succession of gags. Moral messages and life lessons. While never preachy, classic SpongeBob consistently delivered positive messages about friendship, perseverance, optimism, and treating others with kindness. These lessons emerged naturally from the storylines rather than being forced into the narrative. SpongeBob's unwavering optimism and genuine care for others served as a positive role model for young viewers. The show taught valuable lessons about work ethic through SpongeBob's enthusiasm for his job, about loyalty through his friendship with Patrick, and about patience through his interactions with Squidward. These messages were woven so seamlessly into the entertainment that they never felt like medicine disguised as candy. Critical reception and cultural impact. In a DVD review by Bill Treadway for DVD Verdict, he called the show the best animated American comedy since The Simpsons. It is a claim I stand behind. Treadway said the show is accessible to all, that adults will enjoy the witty satire and sly in-jokes subtly inserted into every episode. He also mentioned that Children will love the bright colors, spunky pace, and lively characters, and that parents will not have to worry about violence or crude humor. SpongeBob SquarePants has received universal critical acclaim, being praised for its appeal to different age groups, and the show has earned numerous awards and accolades throughout its run. James Poniwozik of Time magazine described the title character as the anti-Bart Simpson, temperamentally and physically. His head is as squared off and neat as Bart's is unruly, and he has a personality to match conscientious, optimistic, and blind to the faults in the world and those around him. Technical innovation and production values. The production values during the classic era were exceptionally high for television animation of the time. Every frame was carefully crafted, with attention paid to details that many viewers would never consciously notice, but that contributed to the overall quality of the viewing experience. The color palette was vibrant but never overwhelming. The character designs were simple but expressive, and the backgrounds were rich with detail that rewarded close examination. The show's technical excellence extended to its voice acting, with each performer bringing distinct personality to their characters. Tom Kenny's SpongeBob was energetic without being grating. Bill Fagerbakk's Patrick was dim but lovable, and Roger Bumpass's Squidward was bitter but sympathetic. This vocal chemistry was essential to the show's success, timeless appeal, and lasting influence. What made the classic formula so enduring was its combination of sophisticated humor with innocent charm. The show could be simultaneously silly and smart, simple and complex, childish and mature. This multifaceted approach allowed it to appeal to viewers of all ages and to remain relevant across different eras of popular culture. The classic SpongeBob era spans seasons 1 to 3 and ends with the first SpongeBob movie. This era is widely regarded as the golden age of SpongeBob due to its highly imaginative storytelling and clever humor, and it is often referred to as such. Classic SpongeBob is the era that made many fall in love with this show and consider it the best cartoon of all time. Summary. The classic formula of seasons 1 to 3 represented a perfect synthesis of Stephen Hillenberg's marine biology expertise, exceptional collaborative writing, technical excellence, and sophisticated humor that appealed to all ages. This era established SpongeBob as a cultural phenomenon through its authentic characters, educational foundation, memorable episodes, and timeless moral messages, creating a standard of quality that defined the golden age of the series. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, the first movie, A Natural Ending Point. The SpongeBob SquarePants movie wasn't just another cartoon film, it was meant to be the grand finale of SpongeBob's underwater adventures. When it hit theaters on the 19th of November 2004, most viewers had no idea they were watching what Stephen Hillenberg considered the true ending of his creation. This movie represents the biggest what-if in animation history, showing us what could have been if creative vision had won over corporate greed. The decision to make a movie. Nickelodeon and Paramount Pictures had approached SpongeBob SquarePants creator Stephen Hillenberg for a film based on the show as early as 2001, but he refused for more than a year. Making a movie wasn't something Hillenberg took lightly. He was concerned, after watching movies like The Iron Giant and Toy Story with his son, about whether SpongeBob and Patrick could do something big and important on the big screen without losing what made the TV show special. Despite his initial resistance, Hillenberg eventually warmed to the idea when he realized he had a story worth telling on a larger scale. In an interview with the East Valley Tribune, Hillenberg admitted, "I never wanted to do a movie because I didn't think that what we wanted to say needed to be a movie. I like short-form animation. Then this story came up that lent itself to a longer format. You can't do a road trip adventure in short form. Creating the perfect SpongeBob adventure." When Hillenberg finally committed to making the movie, he knew exactly what it needed to be. He said the film's story had to be SpongeBob and a great adventure. That's where the comedy's coming from. Having these two naive characters, SpongeBob and Patrick, a doofus and an idiot, on this incredibly dangerous, heroic odyssey with all the odds against them. The writers decided to write a mythical hero's quest for the 2004 film, The Search for a Stolen Crown, which brings SpongeBob and Patrick to the surface. The movie's plot was perfectly designed to test SpongeBob's character while staying true to what fans loved about the show. When Mr. Krabs gets arrested for stealing King Neptune's crown, actually stolen by Plankton, SpongeBob and Patrick volunteer to retrieve it from the dangerous Shell City. This setup allowed the movie to be both a grand adventure and an intimate character study. Hillenberg directed the film and also co-wrote the screenplay with 5 other writer-animators from the show: Paul Tibbitt, Derek Drymon, Aaron Springer, Kent Osborne, and Tim Hill. This team had worked together for years and understood the characters inside and out. They spent 3 months in a room of a former bank in Glendale, California, crafting the script and making sure every joke landed while serving the larger story. The movie is series finale. What most fans didn't know at the time was that Hillenberg had designed this movie to be the end of SpongeBob's story. Once the 3rd season was completed, Hillenberg and the show's team went on a self-imposed hiatus to work on the movie, with Nickelodeon expanding the programming of the third season to cover the delay. When production on the movie was completed, Hillenberg wanted to end the show so it wouldn't jump the shark, and felt 3 seasons were enough for a series like SpongeBob SquarePants. The movie's ending perfectly supported this vision. SpongeBob finally gets promoted to manager of the new Krusty Krab 2, achieving the goal he'd been working toward since the very first episode. It was character growth that felt earned and final. The credits even showed pictures of SpongeBob in his new life as manager, suggesting this was truly the end of his journey. In many ways, the movie served as the ultimate SpongeBob episode. It had everything fans loved about the show: the friendship between SpongeBob and Patrick, Squidward's reluctant involvement, Mr. Krabs' obsession with money, and Plankton's schemes, but on a bigger scale. The road trip format allowed the characters to grow and change in ways that a regular episode couldn't achieve. Why Hillenberg wanted to end the show? Hillenberg had solid creative reasons for wanting to end SpongeBob with the movie. He felt he had told the stories he wanted to tell and explored the characters fully. In his words, "It reached a point where I felt I'd contributed a lot and said what I wanted to say. At that point, the show needed new blood, and so I selected Paul Tibbitt to produce. I totally trusted him. I always enjoyed the way he captured the SpongeBob character's sense of humor, and as a writer, you have to move on, I'm developing new projects." But there was more to it than just creative fulfillment. Hillenberg worried about the show becoming stale or losing its magic if it continued too long. He had seen other successful cartoons overstay their welcome and didn't want that fate for his creation. By ending on a high note with a successful movie, SpongeBob could have maintained its perfect reputation forever. There were also concerns about maintaining quality. Making both a TV show and a movie at the same time was incredibly demanding. In 2002, Hillenberg halted production of the show after the third season was completed to focus on making the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. He explained, "I don't want to try and do a movie and the series at the same time. We have 60 episodes, and that is probably as many as Nickelodeon really needs. It is a standard number for a show like this." Nickelodeon's different plans. Unfortunately for Hillenberg's vision, Nickelodeon had very different ideas about SpongeBob's future. The network had witnessed the show become their biggest hit since their early days, generating massive revenue from merchandise, international sales, and advertising. The idea of ending such a profitable franchise was unthinkable from a business perspective. Nickelodeon wanted to produce more episodes, especially after the built-up demand that came with the hiatus during movie production. The movie's success at the box office, DSME, grossing over $140 million worldwide on a $30 million budget, DATDSM, only strengthened their resolve to continue the series. From their viewpoint, ending SpongeBob would be like throwing away a winning lottery ticket. This conflict between creative vision and corporate interests created an impossible situation. Hillenberg could either compromise his artistic integrity by continuing a show he felt was complete, or he could step away and let others handle his creation. Faced with this choice, he made the difficult decision to resign as showrunner while remaining as executive producer to maintain some oversight. The transition and its consequences. As a result, Hillenberg resigned as the series' showrunner, appointing writer, director, and storyboard artist Paul Tibbitt to succeed him. Hillenberg still remained involved with the series, reviewing each episode and submitting suggestions, but he no longer had direct creative control over the direction of the show. This transition marked the beginning of what fans would later call the modern era of SpongeBob. While Tibbitt and the new team tried their best to maintain the show's quality, something was inevitably lost in translation. Various media outlets including MSN, Club, and Vulture have reported that SpongeBob's popularity declined following the release of the 2004 film and Hillenberg's departure as showrunner. The change wasn't immediately obvious to casual viewers, but longtime fans began noticing differences in the characters and humor. SpongeBob became more childish, Patrick became meaner, and the show relied more on gross-out humor and slapstick rather than the clever writing that had defined the classic era. What the movie accomplished. Despite the controversy over continuing the series, the movie itself was a resounding success that proved SpongeBob could work on the big screen. It received generally positive reviews from critics who praised its faithfulness to the source material and its ability to expand the SpongeBob universe without losing what made it special. The movie introduced new characters like King Neptune, redesigned from his TV appearance, Princess Mindy, and Dennis the Bounty Hunter, while giving expanded roles to beloved characters like David Hasselhoff, who played himself. These additions felt natural to the SpongeBob world rather than forced attempts to make the movie feel bigger. Most importantly, the movie captured the heart of what made SpongeBob special. The friendship between SpongeBob and Patrick was tested and strengthened. SpongeBob learned to embrace who he was rather than trying to be someone else, and the power of optimism and determination won the day. These themes had been present throughout the classic era of the show. The timeline question. One lasting debate among fans is whether the movie takes place at the end of the SpongeBob timeline. Some fans believe all post-movie episodes are prequels that happen before the movie's events. This theory is supported by the fact that SpongeBob becomes manager in the movie, but returns to being a regular fry cook in later episodes. However, this timeline theory has never been officially confirmed, and later episodes have contradicted it by referencing movie events. The reality is probably simpler. Nickelodeon treats each episode as standalone and doesn't worry much about continuity between the movie and the TV show. Legacy and impact. Looking back, the 2004 SpongeBob movie represents a perfect capstone to the classic era. It took everything that worked about the first 3 seasons and presented it in feature-length form. For fans who consider seasons 1 to 3 to be the real SpongeBob, the movie serves as the perfect ending to that story. The movie also demonstrated that SpongeBob could succeed beyond television. Its box office success paved the way for future SpongeBob movies, though none would have the same cultural impact or feel as much like a natural conclusion to the series. In many ways, the movie serves as a time capsule of SpongeBob at its peak. Every element that made the classic era special, N19. The character relationships, the humor style, the heart, and the creativity was present and accounted for. It showed what SpongeBob was capable of when guided by its creator's vision. What could have been? The biggest question surrounding the SpongeBob movie is what would have happened if Hillenberg had gotten his way and ended the series there. Would SpongeBob be remembered more fondly today if it had concluded at its creative peak? Would the classic episodes be even more treasured if there weren't hundreds of lesser episodes diluting the brand? We'll never know for sure, but many fans and critics believe the show would have a stronger legacy today if it had ended with the movie. Instead of being seen as a series that lost its way, SpongeBob could have been remembered as a perfect trilogy of seasons, plus a movie, a complete story told exactly as its creator intended. The movie stands as both a celebration of everything SpongeBob achieved in its classic era, and a reminder of what was lost when corporate interests took priority over creative vision. It represents the last time Steven Hillenberg had complete control over his creation, and the last time SpongeBob felt like a unified artistic statement rather than a commercial product. Summary: the 2004 SpongeBob SquarePants movie was designed by Steven Hillenberg as the natural conclusion to his series, representing a perfect synthesis of the classic era's best elements in feature-length form. However, Nickelodeon's decision to continue the profitable franchise led to Hillenberg's departure as showrunner and marked the end of the show's golden age, making the movie both a creative triumph and a symbol of what was lost when commercial interests overrode artistic vision. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, humor styles, subtle absurdity versus loud exaggeration. The humor in SpongeBob changed completely between the classic and modern eras. What started as clever, quiet comedy turned into loud, crazy slapstick that changed how people watched the show. This shift represents one of the biggest changes in cartoon comedy ever seen on television. Classic era, smart and quiet comedy. The characters of SpongeBob SquarePants underwent massive changes after the first movie, with the show's tone and style of humor switching from innocent, gentle, laid-back, and witty to loud, mean-spirited, wild, and crazy. The classic era was special because its humor worked for both kids and adults without being mean or stupid. Classic SpongeBob's humor came from weird situations that somehow made sense underwater. When SpongeBob and Patrick had a campfire on the ocean floor, nobody explained how fire could burn underwater. The show just expected viewers to go with it and focus on the characters instead. This created comedy that felt easy and natural. The jokes often went over kids' heads but made adults laugh. The writers figured if they were laughing, everyone else would laugh too. This let them make smart jokes hidden inside simple cartoon comedy. Kids enjoyed the bright colors and silly voices, while adults caught the clever references and wordplay. Classic episodes were great at quiet moments, where the humor came from, how characters reacted, small visual jokes, or perfect timing. SpongeBob saying, "I'm ready!" in his excited voice, or Patrick looking confused created laughs without needing crazy animation or loud sound effects. The comedy had room to breathe and let people actually get the jokes. The smart way classic humor worked. Classic SpongeBob proved that cartoons could be both smart and innocent at the same time. The show could make grown-up references while keeping that childlike wonder. Episodes like Rock Bottom created genuinely creepy feelings that were still okay for children, showing how skilled the writers were at mixing different moods. The humor usually came from the characters and their relationships rather than just random gags. When bad things happened to Squidward in classic episodes, it was usually because he had been selfish or mean first. This created laughs that felt fair and right, rather than just being cruel for no reason. Steven Hillenberg's background in marine biology gave the show a foundation of real knowledge that made the crazy situations feel more believable. Even when impossible things happened, they happened in a world that felt consistent and real. Modern era, everything gets louder and crazier. The shift to modern SpongeBob humor was a complete change in how the show worked. Modern SpongeBob has some good dialogue humor, but it relies more on being over the top and visually crazy. The new approach focused on making everything bigger, louder, and more extreme rather than clever or subtle. A lot of the jokes are boring and basic. What do I mean? Old SpongeBob gave us lots of creative jokes like Patrick singing brush, 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 brushing everywhere and using a toothbrush as an armpit scrubber, or SpongeBob saying, "I'll fake my way through this just like I did high school." Most modern jokes are simple slapstick, where someone just falls or flies into something, or gets hit with something. There aren't many clever, wacky, weird sight gags anymore. The focus shifted from character-based comedy to visual spectacle. Instead of laughing at what characters said or how they reacted, viewers were expected to laugh at extreme facial expressions, gross-out moments, and physical pain. The comedy became about shock value rather than actual wit or cleverness. The face problem. One of the biggest changes in modern SpongeBob is the faces. They over-rely on crazy and over-the-top goofy facial expressions rather than using clever humor like they used to. While they are bringing back some good humor to the show, all of the goofy expressions takes away from it and is frankly annoying. These faces weren't just different, they were designed to be as extreme as possible. Characters would make huge, bulging expressions that looked more like horror movie monsters than the friendly sea creatures from classic episodes. This style came from shows like The Ren and Stimpy Show, which was known for gross-out humor and disturbing imagery. The problem with relying on crazy faces is that they get old fast. The first time you see SpongeBob with giant bulging eyes might be funny, but after the 100th time, it just becomes annoying. Classic SpongeBob faces were simple but expressive, allowing the characters to show emotion without looking scary or weird. Volume versus cleverness. Modern SpongeBob often confused being loud with being funny. Characters would scream instead of talking, run around wildly instead of walking normally, and overreact to everything. The show seemed to think that if something was happening fast and loud enough, it would automatically be entertaining. This approach ignored what made classic SpongeBob special, the fact that quiet moments could be just as funny as loud ones. Some of the best classic jokes were delivered in SpongeBob's normal voice or came from characters just looking at each other. Modern episodes rarely had these peaceful, subtle moments. The writers also started relying on gross-out humor, showing disgusting things like toenails being ripped off or characters leaking gross fluids. This type of humor was shocking but not clever, and it made many fans uncomfortable. Classic SpongeBob could be silly without being disgusting. Losing the heart? Perhaps the biggest difference between classic and modern humor was that classic SpongeBob had heart. Even when characters were being silly or getting into trouble, you could tell they cared about each other. The jokes came from their friendship and relationships, not from wanting to hurt or embarrass each other. Modern SpongeBob often felt mean-spirited. Characters would do terrible things to each other and then laugh about it. SpongeBob would annoy Squidward just to be cruel, or Patrick would be mean to SpongeBob for no reason. This made the humor feel bullying rather than playful. The classic era understood that the best comedy comes from characters you actually like and care about. When SpongeBob got excited about something, you got excited too. When Patrick said something silly, it was endearing rather than frustrating. This emotional connection made the jokes funnier and more memorable. The meme factor. Interestingly, classic SpongeBob became much more popular online and in meme culture than modern episodes. In 2018, Vulture noted the most popular online memes of the series usually focused on episodes from the first 3 seasons. This happened because classic jokes were more quotable and memorable than modern ones. Lines like, "Is mayonnaise an instrument?" or "I'm ready" became part of everyday conversation because they were clever and easy to remember. Modern SpongeBob quotes were often too long, too weird, or too dependent on visual gags to work as memes. The classic era created cultural moments that lasted decades. This meme success proved that subtle, character-based humor had more staying power than loud visual comedy. People didn't make memes about crazy facial expressions or gross-out moments. They quoted the clever dialogue and memorable character interactions from classic episodes. Different audiences, different approaches. The humor shift also reflected changing ideas about what kids wanted to see. Classic SpongeBob assumed children were smart enough to appreciate clever jokes and didn't need everything explained or exaggerated. Modern SpongeBob seemed to think kids needed constant stimulation and extreme visuals to stay interested. This change affected how adults viewed the show too. Many parents who had enjoyed watching classic SpongeBob with their kids found modern episodes annoying or inappropriate. The show went from being something families could enjoy together to something that primarily appealed to very young children. The classic approach respected its audience's intelligence, while the modern approach seemed to talk down to viewers. This difference in philosophy affected every aspect of the show's comedy and made the two eras feel like completely different programs. Classic SpongeBob humor relied on clever writing, character relationships, and subtle absurdity that worked for all ages, while modern SpongeBob shifted to loud, exaggerated visual comedy focused on extreme facial expressions and shock value, losing the heart and intelligence that made the original episodes timeless and quotable. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, character arcs then and now. SpongeBob's evolution. SpongeBob SquarePants himself represents the most dramatic character change in the show's history. The yellow sponge, who started as a lovable, childlike adult with real emotions and dreams, gradually transformed into an annoying, hyperactive toddler who cries and screams constantly. This change happened slowly over many seasons, showing how long-running shows can lose track of what made their main characters special in the first place. Classic SpongeBob, the perfect main character. SpongeBob originally started out as a playful, naive, quirky, and happy-go-lucky character who was optimistic, energetic, and childlike, but still clearly an adult. He would make most decisions quickly, and was mostly unaware of how annoying his crazy behavior was to his neighbor Squidward and other people in Bikini Bottom. He always wanted to make friends with and help everyone, whether they wanted it or not, with mixed results. What made classic SpongeBob special was that he had real depth as a character. He could get frustrated, sad, angry, or disappointed, and these emotions felt genuine. In episodes like Pizza Delivery, when a customer was mean about the pizza SpongeBob worked so hard to deliver, he actually started crying real tears. This wasn't played for laughs, it was a genuine emotional moment that made viewers care about him. SpongeBob has a childlike enthusiasm for life, which carries over to his job as a fry cook at a fast food restaurant, the Krusty Krab. One of his goals is to obtain a boat driving license from Mrs. Puff's boating school, but he never succeeds. His favorite pastimes include jellyfishing and blowing soap bubbles into fancy shapes. These hobbies showed he had interests and personality beyond just being silly. Classic SpongeBob was also surprisingly capable when he needed to be. He was amazing at his job making Krabby Patties, could learn complex tasks when motivated, and sometimes showed real wisdom about friendship and life. He wasn't just a dumb character, he was innocent and optimistic, which are different things entirely. The slow decline begins, where a character's personality gets exaggerated until it takes over everything, provides an interesting example of how long-running shows can change, sometimes sacrificing depth for simple humor. The beginning of SpongeBob's flanderization is subtle in Season 4. His cheerful, optimistic nature stays, but he starts becoming more overly naive and over the top in his enthusiasm. During Season 4, SpongeBob still felt mostly like his classic self, but small changes started appearing. He became slightly more childish, and his voice got a bit higher. His reactions became bigger and more dramatic. These changes were small enough that most viewers didn't notice them at first, but they marked the beginning of a major transformation. By Season 5, the exaggeration becomes more noticeable. SpongeBob's once adorable optimism now veers into complete cluelessness, and what was once charming can now seem irritating or overdone. His capacity for emotional depth, which was present in earlier seasons, is overshadowed by more frantic and exaggerated behaviors. The character started crying more often and for less important reasons. Where classic SpongeBob might get sad about something genuinely upsetting, modern SpongeBob would start bawling over tiny problems. His famous laugh also became more shrill and annoying, happening more frequently and lasting longer. The peak of flanderization. In Seasons 6 and 7, SpongeBob reaches the peak of flanderization. His personality becomes almost unrecognizable compared to earlier seasons. His innocence is replaced with absurd stupidity, and his infectious cheerfulness crosses into mania. The nuanced, relatable aspects of his character are all but gone, replaced by exaggerated traits designed to generate humor from one-dimensional antics. During this period, SpongeBob became gratuitously obnoxious, moronic, and deranged. More like a toddler in an adult's body than the zany, enthusiastic character he was in the first 3 seasons. He became extremely hyperactive and over-emotional, with a higher-pitched voice, a shriller laugh, and a tendency to burst into tears far more often and for longer periods. His treatment of Squidward became stalker-level creepy, his antics crazier and more dangerous, and his mindset considerably more ignorant and childish, to the point where any remaining trace of his adulthood vanished entirely. Even his facial expressions became much more exaggerated to make him come across as mentally unstable. This version of SpongeBob was hard to like or relate to. Instead of being an innocent optimist, he became an annoying pest who caused problems for everyone around him. Many longtime fans stopped watching during this period because the main character had become so different from what they originally loved. Loss of goals and growth. One of the biggest changes in modern SpongeBob was the loss of his goals and ambitions. Classic SpongeBob desperately wanted to get his driving license and dreamed of becoming the manager of the Krusty Krab. These goals gave his character direction and made viewers root for him to succeed. SpongeBob's ambition is gone too, and he's completely content being a fry cook forever. In later episodes, SpongeBob would cover Squidward's and Mr. Krabs' jobs, and he'd be back in his previous position without any complaints. The character who once had dreams and aspirations became someone who was satisfied with never growing or changing. This change made SpongeBob feel less like a real person and more like a cartoon character who existed only to cause chaos. Classic SpongeBob had wants and needs that drove the stories, while modern SpongeBob just reacted to whatever was happening around him. The voice and physical changes. The voice acting also changed dramatically over the years. SpongeBob's voice became higher-pitched and more childlike, especially when he cried or got excited. Tom Kenny, the voice actor, started making SpongeBob sound more like a baby than a young adult. This vocal change reinforced the character's transformation from innocent adult to annoying child. His physical design changed too. SpongeBob's facial expressions became more extreme, with huge bulging eyes and exaggerated mouth movements. His movements became more frantic and spastic. The simple, appealing design of classic SpongeBob was replaced by a version that could look genuinely disturbing during emotional outbursts. Relationship changes. Classic SpongeBob's relationships with other characters were based on genuine care and friendship. He annoyed Squidward, but it came from a place of wanting to be friends, not from malice. He respected Mr. Krabs as a father figure and boss. He had fun adventures with Patrick based on their shared interests. Modern SpongeBob's relationships became more one-sided and selfish. He would force his attention on Squidward even when clearly told to stop. He became less respectful of Mr. Krabs and more focused on his own desires. His friendship with Patrick became less about shared fun and more about enabling each other's worst behaviors. These changes made SpongeBob less sympathetic and harder to root for. Instead of a character who brought joy to others, even when they didn't want it, he became someone who caused problems and didn't seem to care about the consequences. Thankfully, Season 8 marks a change for the better. SpongeBob's more exaggerated traits are dialed back, and his behavior starts feeling more grounded. He regains some of the charm that made him lovable, with more emotional depth reminiscent of his earlier, well-rounded characterization. The over-the-top obliviousness and hyperactivity are toned down. After Season 8, SpongeBob's character returns to something closer to what made him a fan favorite in the first place. His infectious optimism and quirky humor regain their authenticity, while the extreme exaggerations are replaced with a more consistent and believable portrayal. This return to form shows the creator's efforts to reconnect with the show's original spirit. However, even with these improvements, modern SpongeBob never fully returned to his classic characterization. Some of the annoying traits remained, and the character continued to lack the emotional depth and relatability that made classic SpongeBob so special. What was lost? The changes to SpongeBob represent more than just character development. They show what happens when a show loses sight of what made its main character appealing. Classic SpongeBob was someone viewers could relate to and care about. He had flaws and made mistakes, but his heart was always in the right place. Modern SpongeBob became a collection of exaggerated traits rather than a complete character. He existed to generate laughs through extreme behavior rather than to tell meaningful stories about friendship, work, and growing up. This transformation made the show less emotionally engaging and more superficially entertaining. The loss of classic SpongeBob also affected every other character on the show. Since SpongeBob was the heart of the series, his transformation changed how everyone else behaved and related to each other. The entire show became less grounded and more cartoonish as a result. Why it matters? SpongeBob's character evolution matters because he was the emotional center of the show. When audiences stopped caring about the main character, they stopped caring about the show itself. The transformation from lovable optimist to annoying pest represents one of the most dramatic character changes in television history. This change also reflects broader trends in children's television, where complex characters are often simplified into basic traits that are easier to write for, but less interesting to watch. SpongeBob's flanderization shows the risks of prioritizing quick laughs over character development and emotional storytelling. SpongeBob evolved from a lovable, naive, but emotionally complex adult with real goals and relationships in the classic era to an annoying, hyperactive, crying toddler-like character in modern seasons, losing his depth, ambition, and emotional authenticity before partially recovering some charm in later seasons, though never fully returning to his original appeal. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, Squidward's journey from relatable adult to punching bag. Squidward Tentacles represents one of the most dramatic character changes in SpongeBob history, transforming from a relatable, grumpy but sympathetic neighbor into an endless victim of cruel torture for the audience's entertainment. His journey shows how even the most well-developed characters can be ruined when writers lose sight of what made them special in the first place. Classic Squidward, the relatable adult. People can see him as one of the most relatable characters in the SpongeBob franchise, considering he constantly gets pestered by SpongeBob, Patrick, and others. In SpongeBob, Squidward is pretty much the only adult on the show, despite the fact that almost every character in the show is actually an adult. He's the only character on the show you would believe pays a mortgage. Squidward Tentacles, SpongeBob's next-door neighbor and co-worker at the Krusty Krab, is a grumpy and bitter octopus who lives in an Easter Island head. He despises his job as a cashier and enjoys playing the clarinet and painting self-portraits. He is constantly annoyed by SpongeBob and Patrick's antics, who are unaware of Squidward's anger towards them, though they get along well when the situation calls for it. What made classic Squidward special was that his grumpiness felt completely justified. He worked a dead-end job, lived next to two annoying neighbors who constantly bothered him, and had dreams of being an artist that nobody appreciated. As children, the character was nothing more than the comedic straight man to SpongeBob's constant shenanigans, but as audiences got older, a new layer began to unfold. Classic Squidward was more than just the straight man, he was constantly the vessel used for the show to deliver jokes aimed more at parents watching with their kids. While most kids' shows make adult jokes through hidden references and wordplay, SpongeBob decided to make them just about adult life through Squidward's experiences. The working adult reality. Squidward has always been the most relatable SpongeBob character for adults. He represents the reality of working life that many viewers eventually face themselves. After working at the Krusty Krab for years, Squidward's trademark bitterness shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. He usually doesn't have anything to really look forward to, so we totally understand his desire to sleep instead. Many would agree one of the most relatable things about Squidward is that he's always tired. He's around endless loud noises coming from his over-the-top boss Mr. Krabs, who's known for yelling quite often. There's also SpongeBob's loud laughter or whatever destruction he and Patrick cause, something he deals with at home too. A lot of people can identify with his experience and the daily side effects of what feels like tiring, meaningless work. In classic episodes, when Squidward runs into his age-old rival Squilliam Fancyson, he's instantly on edge. That's probably because the two can't have a conversation that doesn't involve comparing Squilliam's successes to Squidward's failures. Jealousy is something everyone feels at some point, and even if you despise the person, you may feel like you need to prove yourself to them. When Squidward's pain made sense. In classic SpongeBob, when bad things happened to Squidward, it usually made sense because he had been rude or selfish first. This created laughs that felt fair and right rather than just being cruel for no reason. Squidward's pain used to be funny because it was tamer, and it gave us good episodes like Squid's Day Off, Opposite Day, and Club SpongeBob. The classic approach to Squidward followed basic comedy rules, DAS. He would try to do something bad to SpongeBob or Patrick, but it would backfire and hurt him instead. This made his comeuppance feel hilarious and satisfying because he deserved what happened to him. The audience could laugh because justice was being served. For example, in Pizza Delivery, when a rude customer makes SpongeBob cry after rejecting the pizza they worked so hard to deliver, an angry Squidward throws the pizza in the customer's face and defends SpongeBob. This showed that despite his grumpiness, Squidward had a good heart and would stand up for people when it really mattered. And while Squidward is cranky, he is very rarely truly mean in classic episodes. He is just very standoffish, but you can always tell that somewhere deep down he actually does care about SpongeBob and the other people in his life. He even likes certain aspects of his job when it requires him being creative, like when Mr. Krabs has him direct the talent show at the Krusty Krab. The shift to torture victim. Squidward torture episodes often boil down to the character Squidward Tentacles being tortured or abused by another thing or person throughout the episode, most times without deserving it. When it is handled right in the classic era, Squidward gets punished due to his negative attitude. Sometimes the torture can be humorous and funny, but most of the time in modern episodes it is cruel and mean-spirited for audiences to see. Squidward's role was transformed from getting fair punishment to a mix of outright cruelty and unfair treatment, with nearly every entity in Bikini Bottom genuinely out to make him miserable. This could be considered character development since it made his jerk-like behavior more understandable, but it also made the show much less fun to watch. Modern episodes started making Squidward suffer just because he existed, not because he had done anything wrong. In these episodes, he does nothing to deserve bad treatment, and everything and everyone is against him. The comedy stopped being about karma and started being about watching an innocent person get hurt over and over again. The infamous torture episodes. Some of the most hated SpongeBob episodes center around Squidward getting tortured for no good reason. Episodes like Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom, House Fancy, and Good Neighbors became examples of how far the show had fallen from its original spirit. In House Fancy, Squidward gets his toenail brutally ripped off in a scene that traumatized many viewers. This wasn't funny, it was just painful and gross to watch. The episode tried to show the difference between a driver with boat smarts and a driver without boat smarts, but ended up showing a driver with boat smarts getting hurt, while the careless driver goes through the whole episode unharmed. Good Neighbors marked a turning point where Squidward wasn't being rude or arrogant at the beginning of the episode, yet still suffered terrible consequences. What follows is one of the most uncomfortable sequences ever seen in the show, where the writers intentionally tried to go too far with Squidward's pain, and it quickly became hard to watch. In most of these episodes, the writers don't know they're going too far, but in some cases, they are intentionally trying to push boundaries with Squidward's suffering. It seems like they stuffed everything wrong with modern SpongeBob into short windows, Squidward being tortured, SpongeBob making things worse through stupidity, and Mr. Krabs caring about money more than people's well-being. Loss of character depth. Modern Squidward lost most of the depth that made him interesting in classic episodes. Instead of being a frustrated artist with real dreams and goals, he became just a target for abuse. His clarinet playing, his art, his hopes of becoming famous, all of these character traits took a backseat to his role as the show's punching bag. The show also made Squidward meaner and more unreasonable in some episodes to try to justify the torture he received, but this approach backfired because it made him less relatable and sympathetic. When Squidward was cruel or selfish in these episodes, it felt forced and out of character rather than natural. Even worse, Squidward's relationship with SpongeBob became twisted in modern episodes. The friendship between SpongeBob and Squidward has become psychotic. SpongeBob would literally make a scene to attract Squidward's attention. He's basically like the overly attached girlfriend meme. It really feels like SpongeBob is in love with Squidward, and it's really creepy. The adult perspective shift. As children, Squidward is by far the least relatable and likable character. He's grumpy, bitter, rude, and at times outright cruel to SpongeBob, who seems unaware of his bad temper. As adults, however, Squidward becomes a much more sympathetic character, even becoming relatable. This shift happened because adult viewers started understanding Squidward's perspective. They recognized the frustration of dealing with annoying coworkers, the stress of working dead-end jobs, and the disappointment of unfulfilled dreams. Squidward's cynicism began to feel realistic rather than mean-spirited. The problem is that modern SpongeBob took advantage of this adult sympathy and used it to justify putting Squidward through increasingly horrible situations. Instead of making him more relatable, the show made him more pitiful, which wasn't nearly as entertaining or meaningful. The stalker problem. One of the most disturbing changes in modern SpongeBob was how SpongeBob's treatment of Squidward became stalker-like and creepy. His treatment of Squidward became stalker-level creepy, his antics crazier and more dangerous, and his mindset considerably more ignorant and childish, to the point where any remaining trace of his adulthood vanished entirely. Classic SpongeBob annoyed Squidward out of innocent enthusiasm and a desire to be friends. Modern SpongeBob seemed to enjoy bothering Squidward and ignored clear signals that his attention was unwanted. This made SpongeBob less likable and made Squidward's suffering feel more cruel and unfair. The show lost the balance that made their relationship work in classic episodes. Squidward's grumpiness used to be funny because SpongeBob's optimism was genuine and pure. When SpongeBob became mean-spirited and selfish, the dynamic stopped working and just became uncomfortable to watch. Squidward as the only sane man. In later seasons, Squidward often became the only sane man, the one character who pointed out how crazy and illogical everything around him had become. While this sometimes made him more sympathetic, it also made him less fun to watch because he was constantly complaining and pointing out problems rather than participating in adventures. This role made Squidward feel more like a critic of the show than a character within it. Instead of being part of the underwater world's logic, he became the voice pointing out how nonsensical everything had become. This approach made the show feel self-aware in a way that wasn't always entertaining. The only sane man role also meant that Squidward was almost always right about everything, which made other characters look stupid by comparison. This created an imbalance where Squidward was too smart and everyone else was too dumb, making their interactions feel forced rather than natural. The recovery attempts. In later seasons, the show tried to dial back some of Squidward's torture and return him to a more balanced role. Some episodes gave him genuine victories or moments of happiness, showing that the writers understood they had gone too far with his suffering. Episodes like Band Geeks from the classic era showed how satisfying it could be when Squidward actually succeeded at something. His triumph at the end of that episode felt earned and meaningful because he had worked hard and overcome obstacles. Modern attempts to recreate this feeling often fell flat because they hadn't properly built up to the payoff. The challenge for modern writers was that they had made Squidward so pitiful and defeated that giving him victories felt hollow. Classic Squidward had enough dignity and self-respect that his successes felt meaningful. Modern Squidward had been beaten down so much that victories seemed like pity rather than achievement. Why Squidward matters. Squidward's character journey matters because he represents the show's relationship with its adult audience. Classic Squidward was funny to kids and relatable to adults, creating a perfect balance that made the show work for all ages. Modern Squidward became a source of uncomfortable cringe that made many adult viewers stop watching. The torture of Squidward also reflects broader problems with modern comedy. The idea that making characters suffer is automatically funny, rather than requiring setup, justification, and payoff. Classic SpongeBob understood that comedy requires rules and logic, even in a cartoon world. Most importantly, Squidward's transformation shows what happens when writers lose empathy for their characters. Classic Squidward was written by people who understood and related to his frustrations. Modern Squidward often felt like he was written by people who saw him as a target rather than a person. Squidward evolved from a relatable, grumpy but sympathetic adult dealing with realistic workplace and neighbor frustrations in classic episodes to a helpless torture victim who suffered endless abuse without justification in modern seasons, losing his character depth, dignity, and the balance that made his relationship with SpongeBob entertaining rather than disturbing. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, Mr. Krabs and Plankton, greed, rivalry, and shifting morality. The relationship between Mr. Krabs and Plankton represents one of SpongeBob's most complex character dynamics, evolving from a balanced rivalry between flawed but understandable characters into a twisted situation where Mr. Krabs became crueler than the supposed villain. Their story shows how character development can go wrong when writers lose sight of what made relationships work in the first place. Classic era. Balanced rivals with heart. Mr. Krabs is commonly known as the greedy founder and owner of the Krusty Krab restaurant, where SpongeBob works as a fry cook and Squidward works as a cashier. Krabs' rival and former best friend Plankton operates the Chum Bucket, an unsuccessful restaurant across the street from the Krusty Krab. A major plot point throughout the series is Plankton failing to steal the Krabby Patty formula with the help of his computer wife, Karen. In classic episodes, this rivalry worked because both characters had clear motivations that viewers could understand. Mr. Krabs wanted to protect his business and the secret that made it successful. Plankton wanted to achieve the success that had always escaped him. Neither character was completely good or completely evil. They were both flawed people doing questionable things, for understandable reasons. As shown in Friend or Foe, Mr. Krabs and Plankton started as best friends since they were both born in the same hospital on the same day. During their elementary school years, both Plankton and Mr. Krabs were frequently bullied by other cruel children. When their favorite hangout spot was shut down, Plankton and Mr. Krabs decided to open their own burger joint to earn respect from the kids. This backstory gave their rivalry emotional weight and made both characters sympathetic. They weren't just random enemies, they were former friends, whose relationship had been destroyed by circumstances and misunderstandings. This foundation made their conflicts feel personal and meaningful, rather than just cartoon violence. Mr. Krabs, from flawed hero to villain. In classic episodes, Mr. Krabs was greedy but largely ethical. He quickly lost this quality as his greed became exaggerated, to the point where his business practices became morally questionable even when he was portrayed in a positive light. While he was always focused on money, he had some reasonable redeeming aspects and morals to balance it out, especially his fatherly role with SpongeBob and Pearl. Classic Mr. Krabs loved money, but he also loved his daughter, cared about his employees in his own way, and had some standards about how far he would go to make a profit. He was cheap and sometimes unfair, but he wasn't evil. When bad things happened to him, it was usually because his greed had gotten him into trouble, which felt like fair punishment. The character was originally inspired by Steven Hillenberg's former manager at a seafood restaurant. According to Hillenberg, his manager was redheaded, muscular, and a former army cook, but importantly, the real manager was not greedy. Hillenberg added the greed detail to give him more personality, but in classic episodes, this greed was balanced with other character traits. Mr. Krabs went from being a typical greedy yet usually well-intentioned boss to being borderline evil with an over-exaggerated obsession with money who would go through several kinds of hell just to retrieve a single penny. While his greed was always prominent, he had some reasonable redeeming aspects and morals to balance it out in classic episodes. The escalation of cruelty. One of the most disturbing changes in modern SpongeBob was how Mr. Krabs' treatment of Plankton became unnecessarily cruel. When it comes to his business rival, Plankton, their rivalry corrupted Mr. Krabs to the point where he takes pure joy in Plankton's suffering and refuses to let him have any form of happiness or even a single customer. He goes as far as being the aggressor without Plankton even plotting to steal the formula. In the very infamous Season 7 episode, One Course Meal, he uses Plankton's fear of whales to psychologically torture him to the point where he becomes depressed and flat-out suicidal. While it's understandable for him to want to seek revenge for Plankton trying to steal the formula earlier in the episode, he takes his retaliation way too far to the point of making Plankton seem innocent in comparison. This episode represents the worst of modern Mr. Krabs because it showed him deliberately trying to drive someone to suicide for his own entertainment. This wasn't about protecting his business or even getting revenge, it was about enjoying another person's pain. This crossed a line that classic Mr. Krabs would never have crossed. Speaking of his cruelty towards Plankton in the episode Plankton's Regular, a truly infamous moment that highlights his pettiness includes the line, "What am I gonna do? I can't let Plankton have so much as one single customer." And it makes you wonder, why wouldn't he just let Plankton have this moment? This showed how modern Mr. Krabs had become so obsessed with winning that he couldn't tolerate Plankton having even the smallest success. Plankton, from villain to victim. Meanwhile, Plankton's character evolved in the opposite direction. Classic Plankton was a legitimate threat, not small but clever, with elaborate schemes and a genuine chance of success. He was the villain, but he was an entertaining villain who you could sometimes root for because he was such an underdog. Modern Plankton became more of a victim than a villain. These seasons generally depict Plankton as a huge victim who barely poses a threat. making Krabs out to be an evil crab who is far more evil and depraved than Plankton ever was. The show started treating Plankton's failures as tragic rather than comedic, which changed the entire dynamic of their relationship. Ever since the post-movie episodes, both Squidward and Plankton have stepped away from being the grumpy bear and designated villain, respectively, to being the only sane man and the victim. While some may argue that this is a step down for the characters, it's also obvious that because of the level of cruelty shown by the main characters, both Squidward and Plankton have become much more likable as a result, as we sympathize with their suffering. Compare Plankton in classic episodes versus modern ones. In classic episodes, the character represented nothing more than conflict for the Krusty Krab and SpongeBob, with a single-minded obsession to steal the formula. In modern episodes, he's a much more fleshed-out, multi-dimensional character who is infinitely more sympathetic, and by the end of many episodes, it's hard not to feel sorry for him while Krabs laughs at his misfortune. The moral confusion. The relationship between Mr. Krabs and Plankton in modern episodes created moral confusion because the show kept treating Mr. Krabs as a hero, even when he was acting like a villain. He is just as villainous as Plankton, if not worse than him, but the show rarely acknowledged this or gave him appropriate consequences for his actions. He seems to casually get away with crimes throughout the series, or at least not get the proper punishment for them, from imprisonment to trying to get Plankton to straight up kill himself right up to downright attempted murder. He generally gets no proper punishment for his actions since, owing to his naivete, SpongeBob overly idealizes him like a saint and follows his orders without question. This created a situation where viewers were supposed to cheer for Mr. Krabs even when he was clearly in the wrong. It made the show feel morally confused and sent mixed messages about right and wrong, especially to younger viewers who might not understand the complexity of the situation. The loss of stakes. Another problem with modern Mr. Krabs and Plankton episodes was that they lost the stakes that made classic episodes exciting. In classic episodes, Plankton's schemes felt like real threats that could actually succeed. This made Mr. Krabs' efforts to stop him feel heroic and necessary. In modern episodes, Plankton's schemes became so obviously doomed to fail that Mr. Krabs' efforts to stop him seemed like overkill. When Plankton wasn't a real threat, Mr. Krabs' cruelty toward him felt unnecessary and mean-spirited rather than protective and justified. The show also started focusing more on their personal rivalry than on the business competition that had originally driven their conflict. Instead of being about the Krusty Krab versus the Chum Bucket, their fights became about Mr. Krabs wanting to make Plankton miserable for its own sake. Economic themes gone wrong. The rivalry between Mr. Krabs and Plankton originally worked as a commentary on business competition and economic inequality. Mr. Krabs achieved success through greed, while Plankton attempted to achieve it through stealing other people's success. The show tried to show that neither the capitalist nor the envious competitor was more guilty or more justified. But modern episodes lost this balance and started portraying Mr. Krabs as a successful businessman defending his achievements, while Plankton became a pathetic loser who deserved to fail. This removed the economic criticism and made the show feel like it was celebrating ruthless capitalism rather than questioning it. Political scientist Joseph J. Foy argues that Krabs, not Plankton and Karen, is the true evil character in the series. Critics have noted that Mr. Krabs represents unchecked, unthinking, unregulated capitalism, where everything is about the bottom line, not about what's socially responsible. The friendship that was lost. One of the saddest aspects of the Mr. Krabs and Plankton relationship is how the show gradually forgot that they used to be best friends. Friend or Foe is a beautifully tragic story about how a rivalry can ruin a good relationship. Both Krabs and Plankton have their own warped version of what ended their friendship, and as is so often the case, the real story is something in between. Classic episodes occasionally hinted at the possibility of reconciliation between the two characters. Episodes like Christmas Who showed them singing together, and Welcome to the Chum Bucket revealed that Mr. Krabs goes to the Chum Bucket every Thursday night to play cards with Plankton. These moments suggested that underneath their rivalry, they still cared about each other. Modern episodes largely abandoned this theme and made their hatred seem permanent and absolute. Mr. Krabs became completely unwilling to show Plankton any kindness or mercy, which made their relationship feel hopeless rather than tragic. The loss of their friendship stopped being something that could potentially be healed and became just a fact of life. Employee treatment issues. Modern Mr. Krabs also became much worse as an employer, treating SpongeBob and Squidward more like property than people. He often couldn't care less about his employees, treating them as if he owned them. He breaks several workers' rights laws as if they are non-existent to him, leading to even free labor at times. He's charged SpongeBob and Squidward for using the restroom, sold SpongeBob's soul for 62 cents, and even once tried to retrieve a penny from a drain pipe with more effort than he puts into employee appreciation. He also committed animal cruelty, particularly when he used Gary as a magnet to steal coins from a local arcade game room. Squidward reveals he hasn't had a day off in 3 years, which is illegal, as all employees have to have days off throughout the year. Mr. Krabs frequently exploits his restaurant's popularity, engaging in price gouging and charging his own employees for use of the building's services. The rare moments of redemption. Despite all these problems, modern episodes occasionally showed glimpses of the characters Mr. Krabs and Plankton used to be. In Born Again Krabs, Mr. Krabs tries to change his ways after a near-death experience, and in a small but important scene, a remorseful Krabs rejects money for SpongeBob for the first time in the show's run. Episodes like Krabs vs. Plankton showed that the show could still create entertaining stories about their rivalry when it focused on clever plots rather than cruel punishment. These episodes reminded viewers why the relationship had worked so well in classic episodes. However, these moments of redemption were rare and often undone by later episodes that returned Mr. Krabs to his worst behavior. The show seemed unable to commit to genuine character growth and kept reverting to the mean-spirited dynamic that had replaced their original balanced rivalry. What was lost? The evolution of Mr. Krabs and Plankton's relationship represents everything that went wrong with modern SpongeBob's approach to character development. What started as a nuanced exploration of business rivalry, friendship, and economic inequality became a simple story of a successful bully tormenting a pathetic victim. The original relationship worked because both characters were flawed but understandable. Modern episodes made Mr. Krabs too evil and Plankton too sympathetic, which removed the moral complexity that had made their conflicts interesting. Instead of two imperfect people with legitimate grievances against each other, they became a cartoon villain and his victim. This change also affected the show's broader themes about success, failure, and the pursuit of dreams. Classic episodes suggested that both extreme greed and envious scheming were wrong, while modern episodes seem to suggest that success justified any behavior, no matter how cruel. Mr. Krabs and Plankton evolved from balanced rivals with a tragic friendship, backstory, and understandable motivations into a disturbing dynamic where Mr. Krabs and Plankton Krabs became a cruel bully who tormented the increasingly sympathetic Plankton far beyond what their business rivalry justified, losing the moral complexity and economic commentary that made their relationship compelling in classic episodes. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, Patrick Star, lovable idiot or empty vessel. Patrick Star's transformation represents perhaps the most heartbreaking character change in SpongeBob history. What started as a lovable, loyal best friend who happened to be a bit slow became an insufferable, mean-spirited bully whose stupidity crossed the line from charming to dangerous. His evolution shows how writers can completely misunderstand what made a character appealing and turn beloved traits into annoying flaws. Classic Patrick, the perfect best friend. He started out as an eccentric and fun-loving oddball who was slightly slow on the uptake but mostly intelligent. He even helped SpongeBob almost pass his boating test for the first time ever through radio. He immediately realized that Sandy's tree dome was dangerous due to its lack of water. He was also able to pick up on Squidward's bad feelings towards him and SpongeBob, while SpongeBob was completely unaware of it. Patrick Star, SpongeBob's best friend and neighbor, was a dim-witted yet friendly pink starfish who lived under a rock. Patrick considered himself to be intelligent, with his ignorance of his stupidity being a key trait of his. But what made classic Patrick special wasn't just his stupidity, it was his heart. He was SpongeBob's loyal companion who would do anything to help his friend, even if he didn't always understand what was happening. In classic episodes, Patrick was silly and dumb, but he was never mean or cruel. His stupidity was endearing rather than frustrating, because it came from a place of innocence rather than selfishness. When Patrick did something wrong, it was usually because he genuinely didn't know better, not because he didn't care about the consequences. Patrick was also surprisingly wise at times. In episodes like Valentine's Day, he showed genuine concern for SpongeBob's feelings and tried to help make things right when plans went wrong. He could be the voice of reason when SpongeBob got too excited or carried away with an idea. This balance between stupidity and wisdom made him a complex, interesting character. The first signs of change. His first change, which started around the end of Season 1, made him a lot more dim-witted and immature, sometimes stating bizarre non-sequiturs like, "Is mayonnaise an instrument?" While this was still funny and harmless, it marked the beginning of Patrick becoming defined primarily by his stupidity rather than his friendship with SpongeBob. During Seasons 4 and 5, Patrick's stupidity became more extreme, but he was still mostly the same loyal friend viewers had come to love. His heart was in the right place even when his brain wasn't working properly. Episodes like Patrick Smart Pants showed that deep down, he knew his friendship with SpongeBob was more important than being smart. However, small changes started appearing that would become bigger problems later. Patrick became slightly more selfish and less aware of how his actions affected others. His stupidity started causing more serious problems, and he became less willing to take responsibility for the chaos he created. The jerk transformation. His second change, starting in Season 4, turned him into one of the dumbest cartoon characters, his actions even becoming dangerous at times. He has also taken multiple levels of becoming a jerk. In earlier seasons, Patrick was a nice, funny, and lovable dimwit who had his jerky moments, but it was hinted that he was just too dumb to realize the wrongness of his actions. However, his jerkiness got much worse and became much more frequent. What made this change so devastating was that Patrick stopped being SpongeBob's supportive best friend and became someone who actively made SpongeBob's life worse. Instead of loyalty and friendship, Patrick showed selfishness and cruelty. He would take advantage of SpongeBob's kindness and then act like SpongeBob was the problem when things went wrong. In the Splinter, he makes SpongeBob's infection from getting a splinter worse by putting a pile of garbage onto it, assuming that it would make it better. He also doesn't seem to focus on SpongeBob's splinter well, despite SpongeBob's pleas to have his splinter be removed. This episode showed how Patrick's stupidity had become dangerous and his friendship had become toxic. Yours, mine, and mine is often cited as one of the worst examples of Patrick's transformation. In this episode, Patrick refuses to share a Krabby Patty with SpongeBob even though SpongeBob paid for it, and then destroys the restaurant when he doesn't get his way. This wasn't the behavior of a loyal friend, it was the behavior of a selfish bully. From dumb to cruel. The worst part of Patrick's change wasn't just that he became dumber, it was that he became mean. Patrick forcing Squidward's tongue to be electrocuted twice by the jellyfish shows how sadistic he is as well, and can make him come off as somewhat of a cruel person. This crossed a line that classic Patrick would never have crossed. In Big Sister Sam, he defends Sam's obnoxious behavior towards SpongeBob and Squidward and blames them for it. Instead of protecting his friends from his mean sister, Patrick sided against them and acted like they deserved to be treated badly. This showed how far he had fallen from the loyal friend he used to be. In The Card, he goes as far as admitting that his stupidity is deliberate after walking through a whole bunch of dangerous places with a Mermaid Man trading card that he had bought for SpongeBob. This revelation was particularly disturbing because it suggested that Patrick was choosing to be stupid and careless with SpongeBob's belongings. Patrick is very unlikable in most of these episodes as he does horrible things to his friends, or does horrible things with his friends, and the show tries to excuse this fact because it thinks Patrick being a jerk is forgivable because he was being an idiot, is a good portrayal for Patrick, even though it is truly the exact opposite. The complete breakdown. In seasons 10 to 13, Patrick trades his jerkish behavior for being even more stupid. He becomes an insufferable character whose jokes mainly revolve around his random bursts of anger, constantly eating things that aren't food, including diapers and other people's mail, and being dangerously stupid to others. A good example is Walhalla, where his entire role consists of him barging into SpongeBob's house, eating urchin poop, which he mistakes for raisins, out of his fridge, stealing a package from SpongeBob's mother and flushing it down the toilet, and refusing to share his fresh Krabby Patty with a starving old man. This version of Patrick wasn't just stupid, he was actively destructive and selfish. He would cause chaos wherever he went and never seemed to care about the consequences. The character who used to be SpongeBob's most loyal supporter became someone who made SpongeBob's life measurably worse. The loss of intelligence. One of the most frustrating aspects of Patrick's change was how the show made him much dumber than he had ever been before. Classic Patrick was slow, but he could still function as an adult. He could hold conversations, make plans, and take care of himself. Modern Patrick often seemed too stupid to survive on his own. The show started treating Patrick like he had serious mental problems rather than just being a bit slow. He would forget basic facts about his own life, eat dangerous things, and put himself and others in serious danger. This wasn't funny, it was concerning and uncomfortable to watch. This extreme stupidity also made Patrick less useful as a character. Classic Patrick could contribute to adventures and storylines because he had some basic competence. Modern Patrick was often just a source of problems that other characters had to solve, which made him feel like a burden rather than a friend. The friendship destruction. Perhaps the saddest part of Patrick's transformation was how it destroyed his friendship with SpongeBob. Classic Patrick and SpongeBob had one of the most genuine friendships in all of animation. They supported each other, had fun together, and genuinely cared about each other's well-being. Modern Patrick became someone who took advantage of SpongeBob's kindness without giving anything back. He would make demands, cause problems, and then act like SpongeBob was being unreasonable when he got upset. This made their friendship feel one-sided and unhealthy rather than mutual and supportive. Episodes started focusing on Patrick being mean to SpongeBob rather than on their adventures together. Instead of two friends having fun, viewers watched one friend constantly hurting and disappointing the other. This change made the show less heartwarming and more frustrating to watch. The sadistic elements. Some of the most disturbing episodes showed Patrick enjoying other people's pain or deliberately causing suffering. In Cephalopod Lodge, they willingly electrocute themselves by the tongue for no reason other than for their enjoyment, with Patrick forcing Squidward's tongue to be electrocuted twice by the jellyfish, showing how sadistic he island. This sadistic streak was completely foreign to classic Patrick, who might have been dumb but was never cruel. The idea that Patrick would deliberately hurt someone for entertainment showed how far the character had fallen from his original conception as a gentle, loyal friend. These episodes made Patrick feel genuinely disturbing rather than just annoying. Viewers stopped rooting for him and started wishing he would just go away, which is the opposite of how audiences should feel about a main character who's supposed to be lovable. The writing problems. Much of Patrick's character destruction came from writers who didn't understand what made him appealing in the first place. New writers coming and going resulted in changes to his character. The new writers couldn't fully grasp the personalities of the characters they were writing, which is why SpongeBob turned into a shrieking, neurotic stalker, Patrick turned into a mentally defective jerk, and the writers forgot to give Squidward jerk moments to make his suffering justified. The writers seemed to think that making Patrick dumber would automatically make him funnier, but they missed the heart and loyalty that had made his stupidity endearing. Without those qualities, Patrick's stupidity just became obnoxious and frustrating. They also seemed to confuse stupid with random, leading to episodes where Patrick would do completely nonsensical things for no reason. This randomness wasn't based on character development or story needs, it was just chaos for the sake of chaos, which made Patrick feel less like a person and more like a plot device. The fan reaction. Longtime fans were heartbroken by what happened to Patrick. Many stopped watching the show specifically because they couldn't stand what their favorite character had become. Patrick has always been a jerk to SpongeBob. It just wasn't as common back then as it is now, but the frequency and severity of his jerkiness in modern episodes crossed lines that classic Patrick had never approached. Fan discussions about Patrick often focused on mourning what the character used to be rather than enjoying what he had become. People would share clips of classic Patrick episodes to remind themselves of why they had loved the character in the first place. This nostalgia highlighted just how much had been lost in the transformation. Some fans tried to defend modern Patrick by saying he was still funny, but even his supporters admitted that he wasn't the same character anymore. The Patrick star they had fallen in love with was essentially gone, replaced by someone who just happened to have the same name and appearance. Comparing the eras. The difference between classic and modern Patrick can be summed up in their relationship with SpongeBob. Classic Patrick would do anything to help SpongeBob, even if he didn't understand what was happening. Modern Patrick would often make SpongeBob's problems worse and then act like it wasn't his fault. Classic Patrick was dumb but wise, stupid but kind, slow but loyal. Modern Patrick was just dumb, stupid, and slow without any of the redeeming qualities that had made those traits endearing. The complexity and heart that had made him a beloved character were stripped away, leaving only the surface-level traits that were easiest to write. This transformation represents everything that went wrong with modern SpongeBob's approach to character development. Instead of understanding what made characters special and building on those qualities, the writers focused on the most obvious traits and exaggerated them until they became caricatures. What could have been? If Patrick had kept his loyalty and kindness while remaining silly and dumb, he could have continued being one of animation's best sidekicks. His stupidity could have led to funny situations without making him cruel or selfish. His friendship with SpongeBob could have remained the heart of the show. Instead, Patrick became a cautionary tale about how Flanderization can completely destroy what makes a character appealing. His transformation from lovable idiot to empty vessel shows how quickly writers can lose sight of what made audiences care about a character in the first place. Patrick Star devolved from a lovable, loyal, and occasionally wise best friend, whose stupidity was endearing and harmless in classic episodes, to a cruel, selfish, and dangerously stupid bully who actively hurt SpongeBob and others in modern seasons, losing all the heart, loyalty, and complexity that had made him one of animation's most beloved sidekicks. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, side characters, Sandy, Gary, Pearl, Puff, and Karen. The side characters of SpongeBob SquarePants served as the supporting foundation that helped make Bikini Bottom feel like a real community. Each character brought unique personality traits, storylines, and humor to the show. However, like the main characters, many of these beloved figures underwent significant changes between the classic and modern eras, with some losing their depth and others being reduced to simple catchphrases or one-note jokes. Sandy Cheeks, from well-rounded character to science obsession. Sandy Cheeks is a thrill-seeking and athletic squirrel from Texas who wears an air-filled diving suit to breathe underwater. She lives in a tree enclosed in a clear glass dome locked by an airtight hand-turned seal and is an expert in karate. Sandy was added to the series' main cast before Hillenberg pitched the series to Nickelodeon. In his series Bible, he added Sandy Cheeks, a squirrel clad in a diving suit, as a new friend of SpongeBob. Classic Sandy was a multi-talented character with many interests and personality traits. She was a scientist, an inventor, a martial artist, a thrill seeker, and a proud Texan. Originally, in the pitch Bible written by Tim Hill and Hillenberg, SpongeBob originally was a romantic interest for her, but this was quickly taken out of the show. Sandy possesses extraordinary scientific skills, such as the ability to construct complex inventions, and she is shown to possess a number of tough, tomboyish character traits and interests. She is skilled at karate, engages in bodybuilding, and is a rodeo champion. What made classic Sandy special was her balance of different traits. She could be the voice of reason when SpongeBob and Patrick got too carried away, but she could also be just as adventurous and crazy as they were. She had her own goals and interests that didn't always involve the other characters, making her feel like a real person rather than just a supporting character. Sandy was also one of the smartest characters in classic episodes, but her intelligence didn't define her entire personality. She used her scientific knowledge to help her friends and solve problems, but she was just as likely to suggest a fun activity or get excited about a new adventure. Her Texas background gave her a unique perspective and personality that stood out in the underwater world. However, in modern episodes, Sandy became much more focused on science and less well-rounded as a character. Sandy was a well-rounded character, but now she's mostly just science, and recent episodes have made her completely obsessed with scientific pursuits to the point where it overshadows all her other interests and relationships. Modern Sandy rarely shows her karate skills, her love of extreme sports, or her Texas pride. Instead, she's usually working on some scientific project or invention. While this isn't necessarily bad, it makes her feel less like a complete person and more like a walking plot device for when the writers need someone to explain something scientific. Gary the Snail, the Quiet Wisdom. Gary is SpongeBob's pet snail who does not speak but instead communicates through cat-like meows. Gary is surprisingly smart and often serves as a voice of reason for his owner. With meowing like a cat, Gary has similar behaviors to the real-world cat. From fetching to doing tricks, he also has some dog-like abilities. Gary represents one of the most consistent characters throughout the show's run. Unlike many other characters, Gary didn't undergo major personality changes between classic and modern eras. He remained SpongeBob's loyal, intelligent pet who often knew better than his owner but couldn't effectively communicate his concerns. What makes Gary special is his role as the show's voice of reason. Despite being unable to speak in human language, Gary often understood situations better than any of the talking characters. His reactions and meows frequently provided commentary on the absurd situations happening around him, and careful viewers could often tell what Gary was thinking just from his expressions and behavior. Gary's consistency has made him one of the few characters that fans of both classic and modern SpongeBob can appreciate equally. He never became crueler, dumber, or more exaggerated. He remained the same wise, loyal pet throughout the show's run. This stability made him a comforting presence for longtime fans who missed the classic versions of other characters. Mrs. Puff, from dedicated teacher to traumatized victim. SpongeBob dreams of obtaining his boating license but fails every driving test he takes, usually causing mass destruction and endangering his teacher Mrs. Puff in the process. American actress Mary Jo Catlett, who is known for her live-action roles on television programs from the 1,970 seconds, such as Different Strokes and Mass Times H, provides Mrs. Puff's voice. Classic Mrs. Puff was a dedicated but increasingly frustrated driving instructor who genuinely wanted to help SpongeBob learn to drive safely. She represented the adult world of responsibility and rules that SpongeBob had to navigate, and her interactions with him created some of the show's funniest moments, while also teaching lessons about perseverance and learning from mistakes. What made classic Mrs. Puff work was that her frustration with SpongeBob felt understandable and justified. SpongeBob was a genuinely dangerous driver who caused real destruction, so Mrs. Puff's fear and anxiety made sense. At the same time, she remained professional and continued trying to teach him, showing her dedication to her job and her students. Mrs. Puff's relationship with SpongeBob in classic episodes was complex and interesting. She cared about his success but feared for her safety and sanity. This created natural comedy through the contrast between her professional demeanor and her growing panic during SpongeBob's driving attempts. However, modern episodes often portray Mrs. Puff as simply traumatized and desperate, rather than as a professional trying to do her job under difficult circumstances. Her character became more one-dimensional, defined primarily by her fear of SpongeBob, rather than her role as an educator. This made her less sympathetic and more like a victim of abuse, which wasn't as funny or meaningful. Pearl Krabs, the teenage whale. Mr. Krabs is a single parent with a teenage daughter, a gray sperm whale named Pearl, who has no interest in taking over the family business. Pearl represents typical teenage concerns and interests, in contrast to her father's obsession with money and his restaurant business. Classic Pearl was a fairly typical teenage character who worried about fitting in, dating, and being embarrassed by her father. Her role as Mr. Krabs' daughter created natural comedy through their different priorities and generational differences. She wanted to be popular and have fun, while he wanted to save money and run his business. What made Pearl interesting was how she represented the normal teenage world existing alongside the absurd underwater adventures of the main characters. Her concerns about school, friends, and popularity felt realistic and relatable, providing a contrast to the more fantastical elements of other storylines. Pearl also served as a way to show Mr. Krabs' softer side. Despite his greed, he genuinely loved his daughter and would occasionally spend money or make sacrifices to make her happy. This relationship added depth to Mr. Krabs' character and showed that he wasn't completely consumed by his love of money. However, Pearl has appeared less frequently in modern episodes, and when she does appear, she's often reduced to simple teenager stereotypes rather than being developed as a full character. Her relationship with Mr. Krabs has also become less central to both of their characters, which removes some of the emotional depth that made their interactions meaningful. Karen Plankton, from computer to partner. Plankton's computer wife Karen has evolved significantly throughout the series. It is run by a small, green, one-eyed copepod named Plankton and his computer wife Karen. Plankton and Karen were included in Hillenberg's Bible, but were not meant to make regular appearances. Plankton's voice actor, Mr. Lawrence, said that he was only supposed to be in 1 or 2 episodes, but I was a writer on the show and I really liked this character. Initially, Karen was simply Plankton's computer that helped him with his schemes to steal the Krabby Patty formula. Electronic sound effects are underlaid by the series' audio engineers to create a robotic sound when she speaks. However, as the series progressed, Karen developed into a more complex character with her own personality, opinions, and relationship with Plankton. From then on, Plankton and Karen's roles in the series grew, as Lawrence wrote ideas to give them more personality. Notably, he decided to write Karen as Plankton's wife, rather than just his computer, as was originally intended. They were both officially promoted to main cast members in the credits of the 2004 theatrical film, in which they play central roles. Modern Karen has become one of the most improved characters in the series. She's shown to have interests beyond helping Plankton, including friendships with other female characters. Karen Plankton and Sandy Cheeks are best friends as of Girls' Night Out. They are both level-headed and intelligent characters with an appreciation for inventions, which is why they are such good friends, and have had many friendly interactions throughout the series. Karen is also part of the Gal Pals group, along with Mrs. Puff, Sandy, and Pearl. This development gave Karen her own social life and relationships independent of Plankton, making her feel more like a complete character, rather than just an accessory to his schemes. Tally and Mr. Lawrence often improvise Plankton and Karen's dialogue. Lawrence called improvisation his favorite part of the voiceover. This improvisation has helped make their relationship feel more natural and dynamic, with genuine chemistry between the characters that comes through in their performances. The Gal Pals, female friendship. One of the positive developments in modern SpongeBob has been the creation of the Gal Pals group, consisting of Karen, Sandy, Mrs. Puff, and Pearl. This group represents genuine female friendship and gives these characters storylines that don't revolve around the male characters. In Girls' Night Out, it is revealed that Karen and Sandy are part of the Gal Pals group, along with Mrs. Puff. After Sandy spends a week as an amoeba, she calls Karen to a meeting at a corner cafe to tell her and Mrs. Puff about it. However, when they meet up, Karen just talks about her stressful life with Plankton, while Mrs. Puff complains about all the stress SpongeBob causes for her. The Gal Pals episodes have provided some of the best character development in modern SpongeBob, showing these characters as individuals with their own interests and relationships. Sandy decides to make their girls' night out fun by pranking Plankton and SpongeBob, which shows her mischievous side and gives the female characters agency in their own stories. In A Cabin in the Kelp, Karen and Sandy go camping with Mrs. Puff and Pearl. Karen compliments Sandy's survival skills, saying, "Good thing we have a Texas tornado among the Gal Pals. Who knew you could use a jellyfish as a recharger?" These interactions feel natural and show genuine appreciation between the characters. The voice acting consistency. One advantage the side characters have had is consistent voice acting throughout the series. Carolyn Lawrence voices Sandy Cheeks and has maintained the character's Texas accent and personality throughout the show's run. Mary Jo Catlett has continued voicing Mrs. Puff, maintaining the character's distinctive nervous energy and professional demeanor. Jill Talley's work as Karen has been particularly noteworthy, as she's helped develop the character from a simple computer voice into a full personality with her own opinions and relationships. Her chemistry with Mr. Lawrence Plankton has made their relationship one of the most believable in the series. The consistency in voice acting has helped maintain some continuity for these characters, even when their writing has changed. Fans can still recognize the characters they originally fell in love with, even if their personalities have shifted over time. The challenge of screen time. One of the biggest challenges for side characters in a long-running series is getting enough screen time to develop properly. With so many main characters competing for attention, side characters often get reduced to simple appearances or single-joke episodes rather than meaningful character development. This has affected different characters in different ways. Pearl has appeared less frequently in modern episodes, which has limited her development. Mrs. Puff has appeared regularly but often in similar scenarios, which has made her character feel repetitive. Sandy has appeared regularly but with a narrower focus on her scientific interests. Karen has benefited from being part of Plankton's storylines while also developing her own independent relationships, giving her more opportunities for character growth than some of the other side characters. The role in world building. Side characters play a crucial role in making Bikini Bottom feel like a real community rather than just a backdrop for the main character's adventures. Classic episodes use side characters to show different aspects of underwater life and provide different perspectives on the main character's actions. Mrs. Puff represented the educational system. Sandy represented science and outside perspectives. Pearl represented teenage culture, and Gary represented the loyal pet relationship. Together, they created a diverse community that felt lived in and realistic despite being set in a cartoon underwater world. Modern episodes have maintained some of this world-building function, but the reduced complexity of many side characters has made Bikini Bottom feel somewhat less rich and diverse than it did in classic episodes. The side characters of SpongeBob underwent varied changes between classic and modern eras, with Sandy becoming overly focused on science, Mrs. Puff transforming from dedicated teacher to traumatized victim, Pearl appearing less frequently, Gary remaining consistently wise, and Karen evolving from simple computer to complex character with her own relationships, while the Gal Pals group provided positive female friendship dynamics in modern episodes. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, music and atmosphere, Hawaiian Lounge versus custom scores. The music of SpongeBob SquarePants tells the story of a show that completely changed direction. The first season's score primarily featured selections from the Associated Production Music Library, which Carr has said includes lots of great old corny Hawaiian music and big, full, dramatic orchestral scores. This was not an accident. Steven Hillenberg had a clear vision from the very beginning. When Hillenberg first pitched SpongeBob to Nickelodeon, he came prepared with more than just cartoon drawings. While pitching the cartoon to Nickelodeon executives, Hillenberg donned a Hawaiian shirt, brought along an underwater terrarium with models of the characters, and played Hawaiian music to set the theme. This moment shows how important the Hawaiian atmosphere was to the show's identity. The music was not just background noise, it was the heartbeat of Bikini Bottom. The series' music editor and main composer is Nicholas Carr. After working with Hillenberg on Rocko's Modern Life, he struggled to find a new job in his field. He had considered a career change before Hillenberg offered him the job. This partnership would shape SpongeBob's sound for over 2 decades. But the approach they used in the early days was very different from what came later. The classic era of SpongeBob relied heavily on existing Hawaiian music from production libraries. Hawaiian Cocktail was composed by Richard Myhill. In the show, it is a common track that mostly plays as a theme of sadness, disappointment, sorrow, or another negative emotion. The track features a steel guitar playing throughout. This track became one of the most recognizable pieces of SpongeBob music. This is the most used non-sound effect production track in the series, with approximately 100 uses in the main series. Nostalgic Hawaii was composed by George DeFreitas and Jan Rapp. It is also known as Welcome to Hawaii, or Hawaiian Pussycat. The main instruments being played in the piece include a bass guitar, a steel guitar, a ukulele, a vibraphone, a drum set, an acoustic guitar, a vocal backup chorus, and other percussion instruments. It is mostly played during happy moments. These tracks created the warm, lazy, tropical feeling that made early SpongeBob so relaxing to watch. Hawaiian Adventures, aka SpongeBob Theme, is a bouncy Hawaiian track composed by Sage Guyton and Jeremy Wakefield. The instruments being played in the piece include the ukulele, the steel guitar, bass, and whistles. It is in the key of E major. It mostly plays when something enthusiastic occurs. This track perfectly captured SpongeBob's innocent joy and energy. The ukulele and steel guitar made viewers feel like they were sitting on a beach in Hawaii, not watching a cartoon about a talking sponge. The classic era music had a specific purpose. The series' unique underwater setting is expertly illustrated by a creative and eclectic use of genres, including surf rock, sea chanties, country, light music, and Hawaiian folk. Every piece of music was chosen to make viewers feel like they were actually underwater in a tropical paradise. The composers understood that music could transport people to Bikini Bottom. But as SpongeBob grew older, the music approach completely changed. It was Hillenberg's decision to adopt this approach. Carr has described the selections for SpongeBob SquarePants as being more over the top than those for Rocko's Modern Life. Hillenberg felt it was important for the series to develop its own music library, consisting of scores that could be reused and re-edited throughout the years. This decision marked the beginning of a new era. He wanted these scores to be composed by unknowns, and a group of 12 was assembled. They formed the Sponge Divers Orchestra, which includes Carr and Belfer. The group went on to provide most of the music for later seasons, although Carr still draws from the Associated Production Music Library, as well as another library that he founded himself, Animation Music Incorporated. This shift meant SpongeBob would move away from authentic Hawaiian music toward custom compositions. Nicholas Carr is a French divided by American music editor and composer who music edited and composed many pieces for shows such as SpongeBob SquarePants, Adventure Time, Camp Lazlo, The Mighty Bee, The Fairly Odd Parents, Mucha Lucha, My Life with Morrissey, and more. As Carr took on more composing duties, the music became more modern and less connected to the original Hawaiian vibe. The change in musical style reflects the overall transformation of the show. The music has gone from mostly sea shanties and Hawaiian music a la Roy, Smek meets Pee Wee Herman, still the main style for the show in the early episodes, but it now includes film noir, West Side Story to Henry Mancini, Jerry Goldsmith, and Steven Spielberg. There's Broadway-type scores and plain old goofy, loopy, weird stuff. This quote from Nicholas Carr himself shows how dramatically the music evolved. Tracks from SpongeBob have different moods, themes, genres, and all of them are gorgeous. The more episodes that aired, the more original music appeared in the series. Perhaps the original music is one of the best soundtracks for an animated series ever. It's composed by a variety of talented composers, such as Nicholas Carr, Jeremy Wakefield, Sage Guyton, Ron Wasserman, Michael Bolger, Barry Anthony, Pat Irwin, Fabian Fernandez, Eben Schletter, Steve Marston, Steve Belfer, James King, Theo Mondel, Gary Stockdale, Peter Strauss, The Blue Hawaiians, Brad Caro, Andy Paley, Hiram Titus, and others. While the modern music is technically impressive, it lacks the simple charm of the Hawaiian library tracks. The classic Hawaiian music created a specific atmosphere that modern SpongeBob struggles to recapture. When you hear those steel guitars and ukuleles, you immediately think of lazy summer days and tropical breezes. The custom scores of modern SpongeBob are more complex and varied, but they often feel disconnected from the underwater paradise that Hillenberg originally created. The music went from being a window into Bikini Bottom to being background noise that supports whatever crazy plot the episode requires. Classic SpongeBob used authentic Hawaiian production music from libraries, creating a warm, tropical atmosphere with steel guitars and ukuleles that perfectly matched the underwater paradise setting. Modern SpongeBob shifted to custom compositions by the Sponge Divers Orchestra and other composers, resulting in more varied but less cohesive music that often lacks the original Hawaiian charm that made Bikini Bottom feel like a real place. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, Case Studies of the Modern Era, The Splinter, Mimic Madness, Doodle Dimension. 3 episodes from SpongeBob's modern era perfectly show how the series changed over time. Each episode represents a different phase of the show's evolution and demonstrates the challenges of creating new SpongeBob content decades after the original concept was established. These episodes reveal both the potential and the problems of modern SpongeBob. The Splinter, Season 6, 2008. The Splinter is a SpongeBob SquarePants episode from Season 6. In this episode, SpongeBob gets a splinter at work and tries to hide it from Mr. Krabs. This episode became one of the most controversial in SpongeBob history. The Splinter is a hyper-infamous episode from Season 6 of SpongeBob SquarePants. Understanding why requires looking at what actually happens in the episode. SpongeBob with a splinter. Upon landing, SpongeBob accidentally trips on tartar sauce. His thumb drags across the wooden floor and rams into a small slab that breaks in half, giving him a splinter that immediately makes his thumb red and swollen. His weak arms keep him from getting it out, and even biting it does not work. The episode starts simply enough. SpongeBob gets a splinter while working at the Krusty Krab. But what follows shocked viewers who were used to the gentle humor of classic SpongeBob. Patrick gives SpongeBob a garbage compress to deal with the swelling and hammering it in to make sure, but only makes it way worse. After helping, he takes leave as his shift is over. When SpongeBob returns to the kitchen, it turns out Squidward squealed on him. Forced to show his wound, SpongeBob lifts up his thumb, now swollen several times as large, puke green, and leaking pus. The episode escalates into disturbing body horror that many felt was completely inappropriate for SpongeBob. The reaction from fans was immediate and negative. The episode is infamous for its overusage of disturbingly awkward imagery and grotesque levels of cringe-inducing, unfunny attempts at gross-out humor. While gross-out humor has been used occasionally in earlier episodes, the scale hadn't been turned too far above 11 at those points. That is to say, this is out of place in an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants and feels as if it belongs in Ren and Stimpy instead. This comparison to Ren and Stimpy is important because it shows how far SpongeBob had drifted from its original identity. The episode is infamous for its overusage of disturbingly awkward imagery and grotesque levels of cringe-inducing, unfunny attempts at gross-out humor. Even then, gross-out humor has been used before SpongeBob SquarePants, but at least the scale hadn't been turned too far above 11 at those points. That is to say, This is out of place in an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants and feels as if it belongs in Ren and Stimpy instead. The episode pushed boundaries that SpongeBob had never crossed before. The character behavior in The Splinter also marked a major shift. This episode marked the start of Patrick's Flanderization, as he also mistreats SpongeBob. He worsens his infection by putting a pile of garbage onto it, assuming that it would make it better. He also doesn't seem to focus on SpongeBob's splinter well, despite the latter's pleas to have his splinter be removed. Patrick went from being a lovable dummy to someone who actively hurts his best friend. Squidward mistreating SpongeBob throughout the episode is very frustrating and filler. He flushes SpongeBob's hat and spatula away into the toilet and continues making SpongeBob break down crying. It seems he doesn't care about it and actually likes that SpongeBob got a splinter, so he wouldn't have to see him at work, even though SpongeBob doesn't see that. The episode turned beloved characters into cruel bullies who enjoyed SpongeBob's suffering. Any SpongeBob episode with literal gore and characters' skin being ripped off to reveal red fleshy veins is automatically on the "please never play this one again" list. But this one is 100% nothing but that. There's no jokes, no charm or character to be found. It's just trying to make you as uncomfortable as physically possible, and going beyond the grounds of any kind of tolerance in the process. This review captures why The Splinter was so controversial. The episode also revealed logical problems that became common in modern SpongeBob. Forgot about his powers. Sea Sponge's body parts grow back if they fall off, something SpongeBob has casually demonstrated before. Had he just removed the arm with the splinter in it so a new one could grow in its place, the entire episode could have been avoided. The writers seem to forget basic facts about their own character. Though all that glitters started the series' decline, to the point where it started the dark age of the series, as it wouldn't recover until season 9. Many fans considered The Splinter to be the moment when SpongeBob officially entered its dark age. Mimic Madness Season 10, 2017. Mimic Madness is a SpongeBob SquarePants episode from Season 10. In this episode, SpongeBob learns that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but does not know how to stop. This episode marked a dramatic improvement for the series. Mimic Madness was hailed by many SpongeBob fans as one of the best episodes in the series and in the post-sequel era. Understanding why requires examining what the episode did right. In the beginning of the episode, Mr. Krabs makes some new rules and goes to his office, while Squidward imitates him behind his back, but Mr. Krabs hears him and confronts him about this. However, Squidward lies that he was imitating him out of flattery, and he is let off the hook. SpongeBob believes this lie and decides to mimic divided by imitate people, because he heard that imitation plus flattery equals happy people. The setup is simple but effective. What made Mimic Madness special was its animation and voice acting. It tests Tom Kenny's voice acting very well, and it shows he did a great job in this episode. He's able to sound like most of the characters SpongeBob mimicked. The animation of SpongeBob mimicking characters by making their shape is very smooth every time. Tom Kenny got to show off his incredible range as SpongeBob literally became other characters. Tom Kenny is one of the best voice actors around, and it was cool to hear him essentially imitate his co-workers and their characters. He did a fine job, as always. And of course there's his singing voice. The world needs more Tom Kenny, basically. The episode gave Kenny a chance to demonstrate why he is considered one of the best voice actors in animation. The episode also featured a memorable song. Who Am I? Was an emotional song with how victorious it sounds, and the lyrics that sound like number SpongeBob is really having an identity crisis. Who Am I? Is pleasant to listen to, and its lyrics are very well written. It was a great addition to the episode. The song showed that modern SpongeBob could still create genuine emotional moments. SpongeBob goes to live in a cave and expresses his regret of not remembering himself. His friends find him and paint themselves yellow to mimic him and remind him of Huhi Island. It ends up working, and SpongeBob comes back to his old self, but the others get mocking mimicry madness themselves and end up acting like him. The plot has genuine heart and shows the characters caring about each other. What made fans especially happy was the return of classic character dynamics. After SpongeBob's friends decide to give him an intervention about his mimicking, this happens. Sandy. Alright, remember guys, this is an intervention, so we need to make sure that above all, SpongeBob knows how much we all care about him. Plankton, why don't we just destroy him and get it over with? Squidward, here, here! Patrick grabs Plankton and Squidward and strangles them really hard. Patrick, you leave my best friend alone. This showed Patrick genuinely caring about SpongeBob instead of being mean to him. So after seeing so many modern episodes where he was a bad friend to SpongeBob, it's nice to see him care about SpongeBob here. The episode brought back the friendship that made classic SpongeBob so heartwarming. Mimic Madness is one of the most well-received episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants since the first 3 seasons. This is the episode that got many of even the harshest modern SpongeBob critics back on board, at least for a little while. The episode proved that modern SpongeBob could still capture the magic of the early seasons. To someone who is such a fan of SpongeBob but hasn't watched the show in years due to disliking the style of the more modern episodes, returning to the show and letting Mimic Madness be the first choice was a pleasant surprise. No, an absolute delight. This episode has everything: good writing, funny jokes, great characters, an awesome song, cool animation. The episode reminded fans why they fell in love with SpongeBob in the first place. Doodle Dimension, Season 11, 2018. Doodle Dimension is a SpongeBob SquarePants episode from Season 11. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick become trapped in an alternate dimension where anything they draw comes to life. This episode served as a sequel to the beloved classic Frankendoodle. This island, literally Frankendoodle. Though it's probably more like a sequel to it, and maybe SpongeBob and Patrick will be in the paper world or something, the connection to classic SpongeBob made fans excited but also nervous. The episode starts with SpongeBob and Patrick going to Sandy's house for presenting to her Squeaky, an orange balloon, only to see that Sandy is working on the Vortex machine, a portal that takes you to any dimension. When Sandy goes to get something, SpongeBob and Patrick play with the controls of the machine, eventually clicking the button to open it. The setup involves SpongeBob and Patrick disobeying Sandy and accidentally entering a strange dimension. I enjoyed the episode. The first part of the episode where they intentionally disobeyed Sandy and played with her invention wasn't that great and felt out of character, but once the actual plot kicked in, it was really enjoyable and a good sequel to Frankendoodle. Many fans felt the beginning was weak, but the main story was strong. The episode brought back Doodlebob, one of SpongeBob's most popular villains. Doodlebob goes onto Patrick's belly and duplicates into smaller versions of himself to bite Patrick. When SpongeBob washes off the doodle with a doodle hose, Doodlebob lands on the puddle made by the doodle hose and becomes huge. Enraged, Doodlebob starts attacking SpongeBob and Patrick, so the two try to use doodle versions of their friends to defeat him, but Doodlebob makes them turn on SpongeBob and Patrick. The action sequences were creative and exciting. Instead of recording new audio for Doodlebob for this episode, archival recordings of Paul Tibbitt's Doodlebob lines from Frankendoodle are reused, and in some cases edited. Tibbitt himself was not called back to provide the voice again. This decision to reuse old audio showed both respect for the original and budget limitations. Fan reactions were mixed, but generally positive. This is my favorite episode of the entire post-sequel era. I didn't find a single flaw with it. Everything is rapid-fire comedy and action. The stuff Doodlebob does is not only cool and epic, but packed with comedy. This is in my top 15 of the whole show without a doubt, and maybe even better than Frankendoodle. Some fans considered it among the best modern episodes. However, other fans felt it didn't live up to the original. It just felt like a less funny version of Frankendoodle to me. The episode faced the impossible task of matching a beloved classic. The beginning wasn't the best, but once they actually get to the dimension, it becomes really good. The parts with Doodlebob were really good. Those parts were the best of the episode. I wouldn't say it's the best episode of the season, but it's one of the better ones. It's in my top 5 of the season. Most fans agreed that the episode improved significantly once the main plot began. These 3 episodes show the evolution of modern SpongeBob. The splinter represents the dark age when the show lost its way completely. Mimic Madness shows the potential for modern SpongeBob to recapture classic magic with the right approach. Doodle Dimension demonstrates both the opportunities and challenges of building on classic SpongeBob episodes. Together, they reveal that modern SpongeBob is capable of both great success and terrible failure, often within the same era. Summary: the Splinter became infamous for inappropriate gross-out humor and cruel character behavior, marking SpongeBob's dark age. Mimic Madness restored classic character dynamics and featured excellent voice acting, proving modern SpongeBob could still work. Doodle Dimension served as a decent sequel to Frankendoodle with creative action scenes, though it couldn't match the original's impact. These episodes show modern SpongeBob's inconsistent quality, ranging from terrible to excellent. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, Audience Backlash, Where It Went Wrong. The story of SpongeBob's audience backlash is the story of a show that lost its soul. Fans did not just stop watching because they got older. They stopped watching because SpongeBob became something completely different from what they fell in love with. Understanding where it went wrong requires looking at the specific changes that made millions of loyal viewers turn away from their favorite show. Steven Hillenberg wanted to end the series after the first movie. Hillenberg wanted to end the series so the show wouldn't jump the shark, citing concerns among Nickelodeon executives that the show had peaked when the movie was being produced. But Nickelodeon could not afford to end the show. This decision to continue against the creator's wishes would prove to be one of the biggest mistakes in television history. When Hillenberg left, Paul Tibbitt took over as showrunner. Once the film was finalized and the 3rd season finished, Hillenberg resigned as the series' showrunner. Although he no longer had a direct role in the series' production, he maintained an advisory role and reviewed each episode. But reviewing episodes is very different from creating them. The original vision that made SpongeBob special was gone. The character destruction started immediately in seasons 4 to 5, then became terrible in seasons 6 to 8. SpongeBob went from being innocent and childlike to annoying and obnoxious. Patrick went from being lovably dumb to cruel and malicious. Mr. Krabs went from being cheap but caring to completely greedy and heartless. Squidward went from a relatable grump to someone who was mean all the time. Patrick's change hurt fans the most. Patrick went from SpongeBob's best friend to someone who actively enjoyed hurting him. In The Splinter, Patrick worsens SpongeBob's infection by putting garbage on it and hammering it in deeper. Patrick used to be dumb but kind. Now he was dumb and cruel. This destroyed the friendship that was at the heart of SpongeBob. The show became mean-spirited instead of optimistic. The show that once taught kids about friendship and optimism now showed characters being cruel to each other for no reason. Episodes like A Pal for Gary, One Course Meal, and The Splinter became infamous for being genuinely disturbing rather than funny. These episodes crossed lines that classic SpongeBob never would have crossed. A Pal for Gary showed SpongeBob being completely cruel to his pet snail Gary. Mr. Krabs tortured Plankton in One Course Meal by making him think he would be eaten alive. The Splinter featured gross body horror that made people sick. These episodes taught children that bullying and cruelty were acceptable. The animation quality dropped significantly. The animations for these seasons are a downgrade from Season 1 to 5 and 9 onwards. Season 6 had washed-out color palettes, unappealing character designs, and too much close-up, gross-out images. The show looked cheap and ugly compared to the bright, colorful classic episodes. Nickelodeon's production demands made everything worse. Nickelodeon demanded new episodes very often, which made them rush the production, and we got terrible episodes and specials such as Truth or Square, terrible 10th birthday for the show. The pressure to produce content quickly led to lazy storytelling and recycled plots. Basic logic disappeared from the show. These seasons have logic that make no sense, even for SpongeBob SquarePants standards. An example is when Sandy literally takes off her fur before taking a shower in the episode Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy. The writers seemed to forget basic facts about their own characters and the world they had created. The music became repetitive and annoying. The soundtrack, while still good, gets noticeably repetitive during these seasons, as the Nicholas car often replaced iconic associated production music with less memorable original production music by Barry Anthony. The classic Hawaiian music that made SpongeBob feel like an underwater paradise was replaced with generic cartoon music. The writing team behind The Dark Age became infamous among fans. Writers like Casey Alexander, Zeus Service, Richard Purcell, and Sean Charmatz became associated with the worst episodes. While these writers may have been talented, they completely misunderstood what made SpongeBob special. They focused on gross-out humor and cruelty instead of heart and friendship. Fans abandoned the show in massive numbers. This is the era where a lot of people lost faith and hope in SpongeBob and stopped watching it, down to the point where some people enlist this era of SpongeBob in their all-time least favorite cartoons list. Longtime fans felt betrayed by what their favorite show had become. The adult audience disappeared completely. The sophisticated humor that made adults enjoy watching with their kids was gone. SpongeBob became a show only young children could tolerate, and even many kids found the new episodes too mean-spirited to enjoy. The show lost its universal appeal. Professional critics turned against SpongeBob. As of 2011, episodes produced since the first film have been variously categorized by DVD Talk and DVD Verdict as tedious, boring, dreck, a depressing plateau of mediocrity, and laugh skimpy. When professional critics start using words like dreck to describe your show, you know something has gone terribly wrong. Major media outlets documented the decline. Various media outlets including MSN, The A, V, Club and Vulture have reported that SpongeBob's popularity declined following the release of the 2004 film and Hillenberg's departure as showrunner. In 2012, MSN cited a post on Encyclopedia SpongeBobia saying that many fans felt the series had jumped the shark and that online fan sites were becoming deserted. Fan communities turned into criticism groups. Fans created entire communities dedicated to criticizing the show. Fan sites like the ScumbBob Wiki cataloged every terrible episode and explained why they failed. The phrase, "jump the shark," became associated with SpongeBob more than almost any other show. Different fans had different breaking points. Some fans noticed problems in Season 4, others held on until Season 5, but by Seasons 6 to 8, almost everyone agreed the show was broken. Episodes like To Save a Squirrel, Spongehenge, Stanley S., SquarePants, Pest of the West, and Le Big Switch felt dull and lifeless compared to classic episodes. The consensus was clear. Seasons 6 to 8 were SpongeBob's Dark Age. Season 7 received mixed to negative reviews, with certain episodes being panned by critics and fans alike. Season 7 was considered the absolute worst season of the entire show overall. This era represented SpongeBob's absolute lowest point. Looking back, many people believe Nickelodeon made a huge mistake. Some have suggested that the show could have enjoyed a stronger legacy had the network ended the show as Hillenberg wanted it to back then. If Nickelodeon had listened to Hillenberg, it would have preserved SpongeBob's iconic legacy, ending the show at its best, rather than tarnishing it with years of bad episodes. SpongeBob's audience backlash began when Steven Hillenberg left after the first movie, and Nickelodeon continued the show against his wishes. Seasons 6 to 8 became infamous for character assassination, mean-spirited writing, gross-out humor, and production quality decline. Episodes like The Splinter and One Course Meal crossed lines that destroyed SpongeBob's reputation, causing fans and critics to abandon the show completely. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, Modern Rebuild, how recent seasons brought back balance. 15. Modern Rebuild, how recent seasons brought back balance. The story of SpongeBob's comeback is one of the greatest turnarounds in television history. After years of terrible episodes and angry fans, SpongeBob found its way back to greatness. The recovery took time and required major changes, but it proved that even the most damaged shows can rebuild their legacy with the right approach. The turnaround began with season 9 inches 2012. The 9th season of the American animated television series SpongeBob SquarePants was announced on the 17th of December 2010 and would be officially announced on the 3rd of January 2011. This season was executive produced by series creator Steven Hillenberg and writer Paul Tibbitt. For the first time since 2004, Steven Hillenberg was directly involved in making SpongeBob again. The return of the creator changed everything. Steven Hillenberg resumed his role as executive producer in the latter part of Season 9, following his earlier departure from the series post the first movie, and continued as executive producer until his passing. Hillenberg understood what made SpongeBob special because he created it. His return brought the original vision back to the show. Original crew members came back to restore the show's identity. Along with Hillenberg, other crew members from the classic era returned in Season 9B, like Sherm Cohen, Zeus Servus, and Kaz. These were the people who understood what made classic SpongeBob work. They knew how to write SpongeBob as innocent rather than annoying, Patrick as dumb but sweet rather than cruel, and Mr. Krabs as cheap but caring rather than heartless. New leadership took control with a clear mission to fix the show. In 2015, Vincent Waller, a creative director, and Mark Ceccarelli, a writer and storyboard director, took Tibbitt's place as supervising producer and showrunner. The new leaders had worked on classic SpongeBob episodes and understood what needed to be fixed. The technical quality improved dramatically with the move to high definition. Season 9 also marks the show's official transition to 1080i HD, by now having episodes produced and aired in widescreen, 16:9, the native aspect ratio of high definition. SpongeBob looked modern and crisp while keeping its distinctive art style. The transition to HD widescreen starting from Season 9 has been excellent. Character personalities were completely restored to their classic versions. Characters who got flanderized during Seasons 6 to 8 have had their original personalities restored in these seasons. SpongeBob became innocent and optimistic again. Patrick returned to being lovably dumb instead of cruel. Mr. Krabs became cheap but caring instead of completely heartless. Squidward went back to being a grump with a heart of gold. The writing became smart and sophisticated again. Witty, self-referential humor reminiscent of the classic era, including Seasons 4 to 5. The new episodes featured the kind of clever jokes that made adults want to watch SpongeBob with their kids again. The show regained its ability to work on multiple levels for different audiences. Mimic Madness became the poster episode for SpongeBob's renaissance. Mimic Madness was hailed by many SpongeBob fans as one of the best episodes in the series and in the post-sequel era. It is also the highest-rated post-sequel episode on SpongeBuddy Mania, with an average score of 9, 18/10 based on 73 ratings. This single episode proved that modern SpongeBob could match classic quality. Tom Kenny's voice acting in Mimic Madness was incredible. It tests Tom Kenny's voice acting very well, and it shows he did a great job in this episode. He's able to sound like most of the characters SpongeBob mimicked. The animation of SpongeBob mimicking characters by making their shape is very smooth every time. Kenny got to showcase his amazing talent in ways the show had never tried before. The episode brought back genuine emotion and heart. Who Am I? Was an emotional song with how victorious it sounds, and the lyrics that sound like SpongeBob is really having an identity crisis. The episode had real stakes and emotional weight that had been missing from SpongeBob for years. It made people care about the characters again. Most importantly, the friendship between SpongeBob and Patrick was restored. After SpongeBob's friends decide to give him an intervention about his mimicking, Patrick grabs Plankton and Squidward and strangles them when they suggest hurting SpongeBob, saying, "You leave my best friend alone." This showed Patrick caring about SpongeBob instead of being mean to him. The heart of SpongeBob was back. Critics who had given up on SpongeBob started paying attention again. Mimic Madness is one of the most well-received episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants since the first 3 seasons. This is the episode that got many of even the harshest modern SpongeBob critics back on board, at least for a little while. The episode proved that SpongeBob could create magic again. Season 10 continued the upward trend despite being shorter than usual. The 10th season of SpongeBob SquarePants consists of 11 episodes, 22 segments, which are ordered below by packaging number and not their original broadcast order. It is the shortest season, lacking the usual 26-episode length. But every episode packed incredible quality. The show started experimenting with creative new concepts. This era is brimming with creativity, utilizing novel episode concepts and drawing on everything from realism to character dynamics and the allure of the classic era to entertain. Despite the show's 2-decade run, it continues to be a wellspring of fresh ideas. Episodes like Feral Friends turned all the characters into realistic animals, while My Leg gave a background character his own episode. Season 11 brought back beloved characters in meaningful ways. These seasons revived characters who were briefly introduced in the classic era and then overlooked, serving not just for nostalgia, but also to give newcomers a clearer understanding of their identities. Characters like Bubble Bass, Bubble Buddy, Mary and her mother, the anglerfish from Rock Bottom, Nosferatu, and SpongeBob's parents returned with purpose. Doodle Dimension showed how to make proper sequels to classic episodes. Doodle Dimension is a SpongeBob SquarePants episode from Season 11. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick become trapped in an alternate dimension where anything they draw comes to life. The episode worked as both a sequel to Frankendoodle and a standalone adventure that honored the original while telling a new story. The show began acknowledging and fixing its past mistakes. These seasons occasionally poke fun at seasons 6 to 8. For instance, in Plankton's Intern, Plankton exhibits fear of Pearl similar to his reaction in One Course Meal. Yet, this fear subsides when Pearl clarifies that she does not consume plankton. The show acknowledged its dark age and moved beyond it. Musical numbers became important again, has some great songs such as Who Am I, Kung Fu Rock, and My Leg Is in Love. The musical numbers matched the quality of classic SpongeBob songs like Sweet Victory and showed that the show could still create memorable music that people would sing along to. Even Stephen Hillenberg's death couldn't stop the quality improvement. Stephen Hillenberg sadly passed away on the 26th of November 2018. Because of Stephen Hillenberg passing away, some fans are worried that the series will go through another dark age since seasons 6 to 8. Thankfully, this hasn't happened so far. The creative team he trained was able to continue his vision. Background characters got their own episodes in ways that felt natural. Background character Fred the Fish constantly breaking his leg due to any and all chaos going on in Bikini Bottom has been an eternal running joke on the show since Season 1. In the appropriately titled Season 11 episode My Leg, Fred asks SpongeBob to act as a bodyguard. Giving Fred his own episode felt like a natural extension of the SpongeBob universe. The animation reached new heights with improved technology. The quality of the animation has seen significant improvement, particularly when compared to seasons 6 to 8. Modern SpongeBob looked better than it ever had while maintaining the distinctive style that made it recognizable. The colors were bright and appealing instead of washed out and ugly. Professional critics began praising SpongeBob again. Tom Kenny's vocal performance as SpongeBob is one of the most iconic and beloved voice acting roles in animation history. Season 10 episode Mimic Madness showcases Kenny's vocal prowess brilliantly, and the story built around it is fantastic. Critics who had written off SpongeBob began praising specific episodes again. The rebuild created what many call a new golden age. This should be called the SpongeBob Improvement Era. After a whole dark age, SpongeBob manages to bring back audiences to watch and enjoy SpongeBob all over again. The show had not only recovered from its dark age, but had arguably reached new creative heights in some areas. Fans started watching and enjoying SpongeBob again. These seasons are a huge improvement over seasons 6 to 8, the show's dark age, with improved writing and storylines, as well as bringing back the charm of the classic era. Long-lost fans returned to see what SpongeBob was doing, and many were pleasantly surprised by the quality. The rebuild balanced nostalgia with innovation perfectly. Many post-movie episodes of the series often serve as sequels to earlier beloved episodes from the series' first 3 seasons. But these sequels felt like natural extensions rather than cheap cash grabs. They honored the originals while telling new stories that worked for both old fans and new viewers. Season 12 maintained quality even as the last season with Hillenberg's direct involvement. Season 12, while still good, is the last season to involve Stephen Hillenberg before his death in 2018, midway through the season's production. Even after losing its creator, SpongeBob continued to produce quality episodes that honored his legacy and vision. The comeback proved that television shows can recover from creative disasters. SpongeBob SquarePants saw a significant resurgence in quality, starting with Season 9-2-01 to present, following a notable dip during Seasons 6-7, 2008 to 2011. The recovery was so successful that it inspired other long-running shows to examine their own creative processes and learn from SpongeBob's mistakes and recovery. SpongeBob's modern rebuild began in Season 9 when Stephen Hillenberg returned as executive producer alongside original crew members. New showrunners Vincent Waller and Mark Ceccarelli restored character personalities, brought back sophisticated humor, and created innovative episodes like Mimic Madness that proved modern SpongeBob could match classic quality. The rebuild successfully balanced nostalgia with innovation, earning widespread critical and fan acclaim. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, SpongeBob and meme culture, internet legacy of both eras. SpongeBob SquarePants has become the undisputed king of internet memes. The show has been noted as a cultural touchstone for millennials and Generation Z, becoming ubiquitous with internet culture and spawning numerous viral internet memes. No other television show has created as many lasting memes as SpongeBob. Understanding this incredible legacy reveals how both classic and modern episodes have contributed to internet culture in completely different ways. The numbers tell the incredible story of SpongeBob's meme dominance. On Know Your Meme, the internet's primary database for all things memey, SpongeBob SquarePants memes currently accounts for 4,635 images. To put that in context, other films and TV shows that make common meme fodder include the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is only featured in 276 images, and The Simpsons, which has 1,116 images. SpongeBob has more memes than Marvel and The Simpsons combined, and then some. The experts recognize SpongeBob's unique position in internet culture. Overall, if you look at our database, there are few other pop culture properties that are as frequently used in memes as SpongeBob, says Matt Shimkowitz, a senior editor for the site whose job entails sifting through and organizing SpongeBob memes submitted by users. You can compare him to things like The Simpsons or Shrek or the Marvel movies, and SpongeBob just has way more specific formats that have been repeated again and again. Classic SpongeBob episodes created the foundation of meme culture. In 2018, Vulture noted the most popular online memes of the series usually focused on episodes from the first 3 seasons. The early episodes had a perfect combination of memorable quotes, distinctive facial expressions, and universal situations that translated perfectly to meme format. No, This Is Patrick became one of the first viral SpongeBob memes. The scene comes from Season 2, Episode 23, according to Know Your Meme. The meme is most often used just how Patrick used it in the episode, in responding to someone asking who you are or when someone's annoying you. It was even used as a reply to a viral tweet asking whether an animal was a bird or bunny. This meme showed how SpongeBob quotes could work in any situation. The Caveman SpongeBob meme proved that even minor characters could become internet sensations. But what makes Caveman SpongeBob, also known as SpongeGar, Primitive SpongeBob, or Primitive Sponge, such a sensation? The image was often used to portray moments of sudden realization or panic. It's easy to see why the meme resonated. Who hasn't had that primitive, guttural feeling of ugh when something goes awry? Squidward became the voice of adult frustration in meme culture. A scene from the episode Naughty Nautical Neighbors, where Squidward plays Solitude in E minor for Patrick on his clarinet, to which Patrick falls asleep at the very first note. The meme captured the feeling of being unappreciated or misunderstood. Squidward memes became especially popular as millennial viewers grew up and started relating more to his cynical worldview. Modern SpongeBob surprisingly created some of the most popular memes ever. The mocking SpongeBob meme comes from the episode Little Yellow Book, which originally aired in 2012. But beyond just the facial expression, the meme is now used in another specific way, repeating phrases with alternating capital letters. This meme became one of the most recognizable formats on the entire internet. The success of modern SpongeBob memes shocked many fans. The episode Little Yellow Book originally aired in 2012. But beyond just the facial expression, the meme is now used in another specific way, repeating phrases with alternating capital letters. For the uninitiated, Know Your Meme's entry on the meme calls this version a call and response meme, and says that its first use was on Twitter in 2017. This proved that modern episodes could create memes just as powerful as classic ones. Several factors make SpongeBob memes so universally appealing. Matt Shimkowitz, a senior editor for Know Your Meme, told Time that a combination of factors make SpongeBob memes so popular. He speculated that nostalgia for the past, alongside the cartoon's young audience, contributed to the SpongeBob SquarePants' outsized presence in internet meme culture. The emotional range of SpongeBob characters creates perfect meme material. Shimkowitz further added that memes derived from the series are exceptionally good at expressing emotions. Michael Gold of the New York Times opined that because of the show's high episode count and that it was so ubiquitous at the beginning of the 21st century, SpongeBob SquarePants became easy meme fodder. Professional voice actors embraced the meme culture around their work. Tom Kenny told Time that he found SpongeBob memes relatable and good-natured. Kenny said that while the show's characters can be considered complex, they are also simple, creating a wealth of content for meme creators to work with. The simplicity of the characters makes them perfect templates for any situation. Specific classic episodes became meme gold mines that are still being discovered today. This is a scene from Just One Bite, where Squidward gives Incidental 40 his order. When he leaves, Squidward calls him a barnacle head. Even minor moments from classic episodes continue to become viral memes decades after they aired. Music from SpongeBob episodes became part of meme culture. This is a song that appears in the episode Crab Borg, in which Mr. Krabs hears the song on the radio and loves it, so he calls the radio station and refers to it as the one that goes bee boo boo bop, boo boo beep, both the song and Mr. Krabs requesting the song have become memes, with the former becoming popular in the YTPMV community. Numbers and quotes from episodes became inside jokes among fans. This is a joke from New Student Starfish. In the episode, Mrs. Puff asks Patrick to introduce himself to the class, and he says 24 instead of his name. Later, SpongeBob and Patrick whisper to each other, and SpongeBob thinks of something funnier than 24. Patrick wants to hear it, and he says 25, causing both of them to crack up with laughter. The quote became a viral celebration meme for anything involving the number 25. Random visual moments became powerful reaction images. Among the show's most popular memes are the mocking SpongeBob meme, referring to an image macro from the episode Little Yellow Book, an image of SpongeBob appearing exhausted in the episode Nature Pants, and a particularly disheveled illustration of Squidward from Squid's Day Off. These images work because they capture universal feelings that everyone can relate to. Modern memes evolved into more abstract and experimental formats. A SpongeBob meme that surfaced in 2023 is the Freak Bob meme. Associated with Gen Z humor, Freak Bob, or sometimes Freaky Bob, is typically shown on the dialing end of a phone call. The vast rise in popularity has sparked many variations of the meme on social media. This shows how newer generations continue to find new ways to use SpongeBob in memes. Even background music became meme material. In 2024, an internet meme surfaced consisting of Richard Myhill's Woe Is Me, taken from the episode Squilliam Returns, paired with a hamster staring up in despair. Dubbed the Sad Hamster meme, the trend found rapid popularity on social media platforms as a way for users to express a reflection to sadness and unfortunate situations. Fan art and comparison memes became their own category. These are a series of fan arts made by various people online that features the classic SpongeBob mostly showing hatred of the modern SpongeBob, with the most popular piece art is one of classic SpongeBob telling modern SpongeBob to shut up. These memes reflected the real fan debates about different eras of the show. YouTube parodies and remixes created their own subculture. The massive popularity of SpongeBob SquarePants has led to a wide variety of different internet memes based on the show. Countless quotes, scenes, and characters from the show have been featured in memes and viral videos. YouTube became home to millions of SpongeBob remixes, parodies, and mashups that introduced the show to new audiences. SpongeBob memes transcended the show itself to become a universal language, literally just an entire episode. It is quite common for fans to just post a full episode of the show on Twitter or Discord, with no edits. Just uploading the entire episode is the joke. This meta humor showed how SpongeBob had become so embedded in internet culture that simply sharing it was funny. Historical and educational memes brought SpongeBob into academic spaces. Historical events portrayed by SpongeBob became a variant popularized by history buffs, which reference a historical event, often with colorized added, then depicting it with a screenshot. SpongeBob screenshots became a way to teach history, explain complex topics, and make academic content more accessible. The meme legacy proves SpongeBob's lasting cultural impact. SpongeBob's main voice actor, Tom Kenny, has explained a variety of memes based on SpongeBob SquarePants in a 2019 video. The fact that the original creators acknowledge and appreciate the meme culture shows how important it has become to the show's legacy. SpongeBob dominates internet meme culture with over 4,600 documented memes, more than Marvel and The Simpsons combined. Classic episodes like No This Is Patrick and Caveman SpongeBob created the foundation, while modern episodes surprisingly produced viral hits like Mocking SpongeBob. The show's simple characters and emotional range make perfect meme templates, creating a universal internet language that spans generations and continues evolving with new formats like Freak Bob. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the next section, the final verdict: can classic and modern coexist? After analyzing SpongeBob history, from Hawaiian music to internet memes, one question remains: can classic and modern SpongeBob coexist? The answer is more complex than most fans realize. This is not simply a story of good versus bad, or old versus new. This is the story of a show that lost its way, found it again, and proved that different approaches to the same characters can both have value. The classic versus modern debate has dominated SpongeBob discussions for decades. Classic SpongeBob ended on the 12th of October 2004. Modern SpongeBob began on the 6th of May 2005. That's only a 7-month difference. Why is that difference considered so monumental? The answer lies not in time, but in the fundamental changes that happened during those 7 months when Stephen Hillenberg left and Paul Tibbitt took over. Both eras have completely different strengths that serve different purposes. Classic SpongeBob, seasons 1 to 4, and modern SpongeBob, seasons 10 to 12. The reason classic SpongeBob is so good is due to its dialogue, humor, and the rule of threes. The dialogue humor is just goofy, all-around good stuff. The show could make any character likable. and any character could say something genuinely funny. Classic SpongeBob was built on sophisticated writing and universal appeal. Modern SpongeBob operates on entirely different principles that can be equally effective. Now modern SpongeBob has occasional dialogue humor, but it relies more on being over-exaggerated and visually entertaining. And some may say that's a bad thing, but I disagree. The show is still hilarious. Modern SpongeBob uses visual comedy, physical humor, and experimental storytelling in ways that classic SpongeBob never attempted. The transition between eras was not clean or immediate. What is it between those 2 months that makes one old and the other new? The truth is that the change happened gradually over several seasons. Season 4 was still mostly classic in style. Season 5 began showing problems. Seasons 6 to 8 represented the Dark Age. Season 9 began the recovery. The lines between eras are blurrier than most fans admit. Quality varies significantly within each era, making broad generalizations unfair. Not all of modern SpongeBob is bad, and not all of old SpongeBob is good. It's just that there were many episodes of modern SpongeBob that were bad, while there were many episodes of old SpongeBob were classic. This means both eras have episodes worth watching and episodes worth skipping. Different generations prefer different eras for understandable reasons. The common agreement amongst fans of the show is that everything got worse after Season 3 and the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, which was released in 2004. However, are their opinions valid? Fans who grew up with classic SpongeBob naturally prefer what they remember from childhood. Younger fans who discovered SpongeBob through modern episodes often prefer the newer style. The artistic approaches serve different audiences and purposes. The show's good again, but in a completely different way. Now, instead of being really funny with dialogue, it's really funny with visual gags. Classic SpongeBob aimed for sophistication and universal appeal. Modern SpongeBob aims for innovation and visual spectacle. Both approaches can work when executed properly. Critics have become more balanced in their assessments of both eras. Some unfairly write off SpongeBob and do not even get the more recent episodes a chance. People are allowed to dislike modern SpongeBob. No matter what, nothing will ever recreate those classic seasons that everyone remembers in their childhood. But to go on and say that there is nothing good in modern SpongeBob is just not true. Modern episodes have proven they can match classic quality when done right. Episodes like Feral Friends, Squid Noir, Plankton's Pet, and My Leg are all a part of modern SpongeBob, and these episodes have been received positively even with their more recent release dates. These episodes show that modern SpongeBob can create memorable moments that rival classic episodes. The meme culture proves both eras have lasting value. Classic episodes created foundational memes like "No, This Is Patrick" and "Caveman SpongeBob." Modern episodes created viral hits like "Mocking SpongeBob" from Little Yellow Book. This shows that both eras contribute meaningfully to SpongeBob's cultural impact. Fan communities have learned to appreciate both eras for different reasons. The arguments about post-movie get stale after a while. Age does not equal quality. I don't count Season 4 Plus as modern SpongeBob, because Seasons 4 Plus are getting older. Fans are recognizing that the classic versus modern debate is less important than simply enjoying good episodes from any era. Some fans actively reject the division between eras entirely. I'm not really sure, but this whole classic and modern SpongeBob and separation between Sone 3 and S49 is getting kind of old. These fans focus on individual episode quality rather than broad era classifications. They watch SpongeBob for entertainment, not to prove a point about which era is superior. The voice actors and creators embrace both eras as part of SpongeBob's evolution. Nickelodeon and members of the SpongeBob cast have expressed approval for the trend. Tom Kenny told Time that he found SpongeBob memes relatable and good-natured, regardless of which era they came from. The people who make SpongeBob see it as one continuous story, not two separate shows. Technical improvements in modern SpongeBob benefit the entire series. The transition to HD, improved animation quality, and experimental visual techniques in modern episodes make the show look better than ever. These improvements enhance the viewing experience without undermining what made classic episodes special. Both eras teach valuable lessons about television production. Classic SpongeBob shows the importance of strong writing, clear character development, and universal themes. Modern SpongeBob shows how shows can evolve, recover from failure, and find new ways to tell stories. Both lessons are valuable for understanding how great television gets made. The future of SpongeBob depends on learning from both eras. A show needs to change for the better at some point. Just try to accept the show for what it is now. SpongeBob will continue evolving, and future seasons will likely combine elements from both classic and modern approaches. The best episodes may come from creators who understand and respect both eras. Different viewing contexts make both eras appropriate for different situations. Classic episodes work better for nostalgia, sophisticated humor, and introducing new viewers to SpongeBob. Modern episodes work better for visual spectacle, experimental storytelling, and keeping longtime fans surprised. Both approaches serve important functions. The real question is not whether one era is better, but how both contribute to SpongeBob's legacy. Whether there's a decline in quality or not, just watch the hundreds of episodes they have to offer and enjoy whichever ones you'd like. This approach allows fans to appreciate SpongeBob as a complete work rather than picking sides in an artificial battle. Economic realities ensure both eras will continue to coexist. Nickelodeon owns all SpongeBob episodes and benefits from both classic reruns and new episode production. Classic episodes provide reliable content that attracts nostalgic viewers. Modern episodes provide fresh content that attracts new viewers. Both are valuable to the network. The evidence shows that SpongeBob works best when it combines classic and modern elements. Episodes like Mimic Madness succeed because they use modern animation techniques and experimental concepts while maintaining classic character relationships and emotional depth. The best modern episodes learn from classic episodes without simply copying them. Personal preference will always influence how people view different eras. Thanks for pointing out the obvious. Just kidding, but it's not the first time I read something like this. Those arguments are getting kinda overused. It's bothersome after a while. Fans will continue debating which era is better, but the debate itself is less important than recognizing that both have value. The final verdict is that classic and modern SpongeBob can and should coexist. They represent different approaches to the same characters and world, each with unique strengths and weaknesses. Classic SpongeBob provides the foundation and shows what made the series special. Modern SpongeBob shows how the series can evolve and find new ways to surprise audiences. Together, they create a more complete and interesting television legacy than either could alone. Fans should embrace both eras while being honest about their individual strengths and weaknesses. This means recognizing that classic SpongeBob had some weak episodes, and modern SpongeBob has some excellent episodes. It means appreciating dialogue, humor, and visual comedy as different but equally valid approaches. Most importantly, it means remembering that SpongeBob SquarePants, in all its forms, has brought joy to millions of people across multiple generations. Summary: classic and modern SpongeBob can coexist because they serve different purposes with distinct strengths. Classic episodes excel in dialogue, humor, and universal appeal, while modern episodes succeed through visual comedy and experimental storytelling. Both eras contribute to SpongeBob's cultural legacy through memorable episodes and viral memes. Rather than viewing them as competing approaches, fans should appreciate how each era teaches valuable lessons about television evolution and storytelling innovation. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.